Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
So we could sit here and tell you exactly why Going In Raw is the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to.
But why hear it from us when you can hear it from this cheap Undertaker impersonator we found milling about outside our office?
Take it from the dead man. The only thing greater than having powers of darkness is having the power of listening to Going In Raw every day. Only when you've subscribed will you rest in peace. Now, where's my sandwich?
Wait, what, sandwich? Did you tell him he could have a sandwich?
No, I told him he could have your sandwich.
Fine.
Going In Raw, a pro wrestling podcast available every day wherever podcasts can be found.
Did you know that the Pope once tried to ban racing? Or how an Indy driver became the biggest drug dealer in America?
More than $100 million worth of marijuana into South Florida.
Hi, I'm James Pumphrey from Donut Media.
And I'm Nolan Sykes, also from Donut Media. And we're the hosts of the Past Gas podcast, where we dive deep into the automotive world's most insane stories.
Like when Ford tried to buy Ferrari, or when Evel Knievel brawled with the Hells Angels.
Evel Knievel just jumped off his bike and punched him.
From the greatest rivalries to simply how a car came to be, we'll cover it all in Past Gas. So make sure to tune in every Monday for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Past Gas Podcast.
It's about cars.
It's not about farts.
I promise.
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Yo, welcome back to Any Given Sunday, the Tuesday edition. I'm getting used to these Tuesday shows. For Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, I'm your host, Manny Brown. What's up, everybody? Got a round table with me today. Got some of my guys from the Dead End family, the Brandis Brolick. First and foremost, got my man Kyle, 12 Kyle from the 12 Kyle podcast, back with us. And then we got two. What's good? We got two first-time guests on the show. My man Nick, host of the No Disrespect podcast, co-host of Dead End Sports, and my man Shelton J, first time on the show as well, host of the Black Career podcast. What's good, everybody?
Man,
welcome to the show.
Man? Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
What's going on? Glad to be here, man.
Thank y'all for being on, man. I appreciate y'all. For the first time, for the first timers, man, welcome.
Right,
hey, you say in the building, we here.
So what's good, everybody, man? I mean, we kind of had a great conversation offline. We won't bore y'all with the details of it, man. But as always, I like to start every show off talking about our current condition. You know, the COVID-19. How's life in COVID-19 America treating y'all?
Oh man, I'm just living day by day trying to get through it. But I will say this, for me, man, it's good because I ain't spending no money right now. So as long as the money keeps growing like this, I'm okay. We're not spending no gas. We ain't spending no money on nothing. So everybody should be saving right now.
That's true. So that is very true.
That's the positive from it.
How's this treating you, man?
It's going pretty good, man. No complaints. I mean, because nobody wants to hear you complain anyway. Honestly, I'm very blessed. Because, you know, both me and my wife, our jobs have us working from home and the kids are here. Actually, my kids just finished school this past Friday. So everybody's done with school. And my oldest son, he's home from college. So he's done with his classes. So it's been cool, man. We have a big enough house where everybody has their space. And, you know, if I get mad, I could always go sit on the deck and just chill in the backyard. But, you know, just to get away from them. But it's been good, man. I think the biggest thing I've just tried to do is something I heard someone say: stay safe, stay sanitized, and stay sane. Yeah, those are the three things you got to do. So that's all I'm doing.
That's Berean church, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no doubt.
You already know.
Family wise, everybody safe, everybody healthy, everybody doing all right.
Yeah, they good.
Yeah, man. Everybody's good. Everybody's good.
For me, I'm just.
And when we do go out in public, we do have a mask.
Yeah, I'm getting used to the mask. I leave one in my car just in case, and sometimes I'll be forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, just this quarantine stuff, it's cool. Some days I do feel like, remember off of Major Payne when Damon Wayans, he got fired and stuff. He was in his apartment. He was going crazy. Some days I do feel like that. Damn, they're about to eat a rat. But nah, it's good. It's good to get away sometimes. I think we all asked for this in a way, and we kind of got it. It's not in the way we wanted it, but we got it as far as like just time to yourself to reevaluate, reflect, all that.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought we same here, man. Same here. I think it only hits me on the weekends when I'm like, damn, I wish something was going on. I wish I could do this. Or I wish I could do that. But during the week,
what it is, man?
Really,
what it is, Manny? It's not so much as that you can't go out. It's knowing the fact that you can't go out. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference.
Exactly.
It's because there are weekends, I'm sure, where you're like, man, I ain't doing that. I'm just going to chill this weekend.
Right.
But the weekends hit kind of different if you've been working from home. So there's really no, like relief as in like when you log off at 5:00. It's like, I feel relieved now. Just go in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not coming home from work, but it's just knowing that you can't go out, and you're wherein before you had the options to do whatever you wanted to do, and we all live in cities where there's a lot of stuff going on, and you want to be involved, especially as the weather is changing. But that's what it is, man. But just I can tell you guys, it's not going to last as long as we probably think it is. But I think the biggest thing is what we do on the other side is what's important.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. And my biggest thing is, man, honestly, like if even if this is long term, by long term I mean like the next few months or whatever, as long as people are staying safe and healthy, that's my biggest thing, man. I mean, it sucks, it's coming in the heels of summer and whatnot, and yeah, of course we all want to do our own things when it comes to the summertime and go out and enjoy ourselves. But at the end of the day, man, if people are not healthy, people are not safe, if people are putting themselves at risk, and not even themselves, but other people at risk, your family members, etc., then yeah, what's it really worth? You know what I mean? So, I'm just hoping whatever happens with this, it's just, we're staying healthy, we're staying safe. And that's the most important thing, man. So I'm glad y'all fellas is doing all right. Y'all staying safe. That's the most important thing. I asked that because I had a guest on a couple weeks ago. We were doing the show, chopping it up, and we did the show on a Tuesday, and then he lost his grandfather, Friday? So it's from COVID. You know what I mean? It just like, that really hit me like, damn, like we just sitting here chopping it up, talking about football. And then couple days later, like not even, loses his grandfather. Like it's just crazy, man. It's real, man. It's hitting a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So, just be safe out there, everybody. Please, 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 please be safe. I say that every episode, every podcast, just say that again, man. Please be safe. Go make smart decisions. If you leave the house, you're going into crowded areas, just wear a mask, all that good stuff. Just make sure you're taking the precautionary steps. Man,
yes, sir.
I don't know who that was. Somebody agreed.
Nick, what you doing over there, man?
That ain't me.
I don't know what Nick doing over there.
Nah. I just got all my tech stuff fixed. I was messed up for a little minute, but I'm good now.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Cussing him out. He doing something.
Yo, Siri be listening though. Siri be listening.
I know, right?
I swear. Siri be listening. I don't think Siri ain't listening. So listening, Siri's the Fed right now, yo.
But
for sure.
And Alexa.
Yeah, like all of them, man. All of them. Cortana, all of them. All of them ladies is listening, bro. But the reason we're here today is to celebrate the culmination of The Last Dance. The last 2 episodes aired this past Sunday. So I figured I'd get y'all fellas' opinions on the 2 episodes that we saw Sunday night and the documentary as a whole. So first things first, I'll go around the room. I'll start with Kyle. What were your thoughts on Sunday night's episodes?
Man, I thought it was incredible, man. I thought that they really, really brought it home, closing it out with the, everything that we saw as far as like that final year. I was telling somebody earlier, what this documentary did was it brought context, because it's one thing to try to explain Michael Jordan and who he was and that whole era, but, and it's another thing to give someone a YouTube clip, but this actually put you into it. And being someone who grew up in that era, who grew up a Jordan fan, I thought it was incredible, man. I think one of the biggest things that I took away from just the entire thing was access, because we never had this kind of access to Jordan. Jordan didn't let us in. And that's the thing that I think I want to kind of impress upon people, particularly those who are a lot younger than me, is that we didn't have, because there was no internet, there was no Instagram, there was no Twitter or anything like that. We didn't have access to our stars. And he was the biggest star. And he's very, very private, even though we got a chance to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, for a perfect example, like all of the scenes that you saw in this documentary of Jordan sitting in a house, that's not even his house. Like none of this was filmed in any of his houses. His wife doesn't appear on here. His kids, you know, his older kids do, but his younger kids, he's got twins, I think. They're relatively young. But he's very, very private. And, you know, we got a chance to get in. So I think that's the thing, that one of the major things I took away from this documentary was that we had access. The fact that the NBA had this behind the scenes stuff and they were able to kind of toggle back and forth between this championship season and his earlier career, I thought was great. But they really, really brought it home, man. I mean, from everything from, you know, Steve Kerr. And I knew the story about Steve Kerr's dad, but I had never heard it in that context because Steve really didn't talk about it a lot. And I do remember it being a story, I think, back in the day when he was at Arizona. He was at the free throw line and some kids were yelling, Beirut, Beirut, Beirut. Like, I mean, they're just being really, really nasty because that's where his dad was assassinated at. But, you know, bringing that all together and from that to, I had actually forgotten that Rodman went to wrestle after, like, in between practices. And I'm watching that and I'm like, damn. And I mean, but that just goes to show you, like, we just didn't have that kind of access to, you know, our sports figures. So I didn't know. So just imagine somebody during the NBA finals, imagine Draymond Green going to wrestle before after practice. So, I mean, and that made the news, but it really didn't make the news. So, I mean, like, I was in watching this, even being a fan, I was able to, you know, be reminded of some things. And I learned a lot about, you know, the man who's been, you know, the mystery of Black Jesus.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Shel?
Yo, it like he said, man, it was just great insight on him, and he felt like Frank Sinatra to me. He was like, man, I did it my way, and he really, you know, being a Jordan fan growing up, you know, and I knew about the toughness and all that stuff like that, but it was just really impressive to see how emotional he was when explaining, like, he's probably been carrying a lot of this stuff with him for years. And it was just really impressive to see how emotional this whole project was for him and him telling his story. And that was pretty deep, man. It was real deep. And it was good. Like you said, I remember the wrestling thing. I remember that clearly. I didn't remember him going off and Jordan having to go get him from Vegas. But the wrestling thing, I do remember that. And I remember him being a headache to them. I remember that clear as day, too. Because I remember being scared that it wasn't going to work out because I was a Bulls fan. So I was just thinking, this is not going to work. There's no way they're going to get this to stay together. Because Dennis was he was just a lot. And he was doing a lot. I remember, you know, taking his shoes off on the bench. Remember, he would just take his shoes off and he just did a lot. He did a lot.
The cameraman.
Yeah, taking the camera, all the stuff he was doing, man. But to see even the insight on Dennis was great for this film because it showed you that he was a tactician. He paid attention to the detail. It was just a good show. And those last two episodes were powerful. I felt like I was there in that Utah game. I don't know about y'all, but that Utah series that I watched again, it felt like I was there. That's how descriptive it was, and I was inside the mind of Michael Jordan, and it just proved his greatness even more for me.
What about you, Nick?
For me, I guess I got to be the disrespectful one. It made me not in the way you think. It made me think of why the hell do we say LeBron's the GOAT? Like, what makes people think that, like, after watching this doc, you really just sit back and be like, all the stories that I've heard, because I'm of the era that kind of was a youth going into it. So I didn't really get to see Jordan really as a teenager until he was with the Wizards. So that's not even the Jordan you want to see. But to see this whole doc in all 10 parts, it breaks down all those stories you heard, the highlights, the context that Kyle references, and also it just humanizes Jordan in a way of like, if you think this way, then you could probably achieve it. And it made me think of like, we talk about Jordan as an asshole sometimes, or even his teammates will even refer to him that way. And then we see that like how LeBron treats his teammates and is all more buddy. And I was thinking like, if LeBron was more Jordan, will we see 6 losses in the finals, or will we see possibly he could have been the greatest of all time? So it just kind of made me think of like, Jordan's mindset is just so focused, more focused than anybody on the court. That's why he's the greatest. Like with LeBron, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you never know what his focus is sometimes when it counts. Cause you would think that it was someone with his gifts should dominate his era like Jordan did. And if you look at LeBron's era, like everybody ate. I even saw Dirk get his ring. You know what I'm saying? Like, like who didn't eat in LeBron's era? Not even just one title, but multiple titles, runs.
Right.
And Jordan stopped. They were throwing out trivia throughout the whole doc, and there was like, what player Hall of Famer did Jordan stop the most? And it was Patrick Ewing. It was like 4 times. Yeah. And I'm like, damn, like, and that's probably why Pat don't get mentioned like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you look at LeBron, the people that LeBron lost to, they will always be mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. That's what I was just thinking.
I thought it was 6 times.
Yeah, I mean, you make up some good points. I mean, all y'all bring up some good points, man. I'm with everybody, man. To echo the same sentiments as everybody. I thought it ended on a perfect note. It really built throughout the list of episodes. It really hit that crescendo on Sunday night. Just reliving. I mean, that 10th episode, man, reliving Utah, the shot, everything. I mean, it was just incredible, man. You know, seeing the parties involved kind of go through it. I mean, I've seen it before, but never with this kind of in-depth detail and analysis and Jordan in his own words. I mean, it was just amazing, man. Just the final 2 episodes were really, really well done, really great. I'm with everybody. I share the same thoughts. You guys brought up something interesting that I wanted to kind of come back to. So Kyle and Shelton, you guys are the older ones out of us two. So you guys remember, not throwing no shade. I'm just saying, y'all the OGs. Y'all the OGs.
Right. We're so not as old as Ken.
Ken grew up with Mike.
Yeah, I know, right?
He used to babysit Mike.
Shout out to Ken.
Shout out to Ken, man. Shout out to everybody also, man. FIFO, everybody over at DS.
No doubt.
But talk to me about, because you guys remember Jordan. Like me, I was early teen, so I remember specifically the '93 finals as like my introduction to Jordan. That's when I was what, 7 years old. So I remember the '93 finals as like being my first introduction to like that's when I really started watching basketball and knowing what the hell was going on and paying attention on an every game basis. And then of course, so I missed a lot of the first three-peat, but so the second three-peat was more of my frame of reference. But you guys remember Jordan through the first three-peat, second three-peat. You guys remember the battles with the Pistons. Just talk to me about just how big Jordan was, man, because I think that's one of the things that this documentary will bring up is just how much of a rock star. I mean, I'm just like a larger than life figure Michael Jordan was. So just talk to me about being in the 90s, being teenagers, young adults at that time frame, like you guys were, seeing this all unfold. I mean, it must have just been like crazy to just see an athlete be that big, that well known.
It was for me. And let me tell you something I thought about, and I'm going to ask y'all what y'all think about this too. But I thought about how, if he had been around during the era of social media, would he have been as big as he was? That's a question I often ask. And the reason why I ask that is because, well, he was primetime TV. So we all got to see him on a day-to-day basis. Whereas maybe if he grew up in the social media era, we would have saw other players as well. So I don't know. I think he still probably would have been the same thing, but it was crazy to watch, man, because you didn't know what he was going to do next. If you notice, we know him for being his airness and jumping around and, being the best athlete and floating through the air is what he was known for. But if you went back through that documentary, you saw most of the shots he hit was jumpers. So most of those big shots were
mid-range
jump shots.
Mid-range.
That's what my brother brought up. My brother brought up that issue, that point to me the other day too, and I forgot. That's the part, like I said, that I forgot about back then. He was like, "Yo," he said, "Jordan was one of the most fundamentally sound players you'll ever see in your life because he shot from the elbows, he shot from the free throw line, he could take it to the basket, he could do whatever needed to be done." But that's what I remember most, man. Is just his greatness, man, and always trying to see. I remember the Pistons series, him by himself single-handedly trying to carry those guys through, and he was just great, man. He was just it was a once in a lifetime thing, and you knew that even then.
What about you, Kyle? What are your memories from that time frame?
I go back even further with Jordan. I go back to I started watching the NBA in 1980, right? And so I remember Jordan in college at North Carolina. He wasn't even Michael. They used to call him Mike. That's what the announcers called him. And I remember that Monday night, watching the national championship game. I begged my mom. I was like, "Mom, can I stay up and watch the game? Can I stay up and watch the game?" It was a national championship game between Carolina and Georgetown. And she let me stay up and watch it. And Mike Jordan hit the shot. And, from there, I watched him and I became a fan. And subsequently, because I grew up in South Carolina, there was no basketball team there. So I just gravitated to the Bulls because I loved Jordan. And so, but just watching him, one thing that I loved about the documentary with them going back and forth was that if you look at, 90s Jordan, he was one way, but the 80s Jordan, he was cold. I mean, that was Air Jordan. I mean, come through the lane, dunk on the whole damn team. I'm going to get 35, 36, 37 a night. We're going to win. I'm going to talk trash. I mean, he was all of that. And it was beautiful to see. And his ascension to stardom kind of happened right at the right time. The NBA, when I started watching the NBA, a lot of the games were on tape delay. So you didn't even see him live. There was no such thing as a league pass or anything like that. Jordan happened to be playing for the Bulls, and the Bulls were on Superstation WGN. Well, that's a national cable station. So we all got to see Jordan. So if Jordan was playing for the Sacramento Kings, we don't see him as often. You know what I'm saying? Right. So that was something else. And then when NBC got the rights to the NBA, we started seeing more games as far as during the week or whatever. Not on the week, on the weekends. And he took off. And, Shelton was saying, that the series with the Pistons, it was great seeing that, man, because you saw him, literally fight. I mean, he had to fight. And then he realized, look, I can't do this by myself. Pippen had to grow up. Horace Grant had to grow up. All of those guys had to get better for him and now he was going to do his thing. But what happened was they got confident and they got to a point where look, we're not taking it. And the Pistons couldn't do anything with him. And then you saw him, just ascend to be, the superstar that he was. But one of the things that I think they touched on very key in the documentary was that it was really, really, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about context. It was really, really hard being Michael Jordan because he literally couldn't go anywhere. I mean, we see our athletes now, we see Tom Brady, we see LeBron, we see, whomever. We see these guys on Instagram, they can come in a room, go out of a room. Jordan literally, when he went into a hotel, he was a prisoner in the hotel. He couldn't go anywhere. And I remember him doing an interview and he said, I want to get to a point. He's like, if I ever get to a point where I could walk down the street and nobody says anything to me, I'd be cool with that. And I was like, damn, is it that bad? It was almost like it was a burden because, he was a rock star before, it was really cool to be a rock star. And to Shelton's point, there was no social media, but if Jordan had been Jordan on the court, I think we probably would have gotten the same Jordan, but off the court, I don't know, because Mike had his issues, you know what I mean? So, and so, from the gambling to all this other stuff that he did, that a lot of stuff that people don't know about, that some of the stuff they didn't even touch on the documentary, which I understand. That being, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, what I was going to say was, social media really would have blown that up. And I don't think that some of the stuff that he did off the court would have gotten away, you know, would have gone over, you know, well with people. And I think people would have soured on him, man. But Mike was must see TV, man. I mean, I always said Jordan was the guy that when he was playing, if he was playing, your grandmother would sit and watch. And your grandmother might not even care about basketball, but she knew Jordan and she was going to sit and watch. And he had the ability to bring people in. And like I said, navigating through social media, that's where I give guys like LeBron, Kobe, I give them some slack because they had to go through this. They didn't have to go through what he went. I mean, he didn't have to go through this type of stuff. I don't know how he would have handled it because of the, you know, everything that comes along with it. I mean, like I said, Jordan did a great job of keeping us out. Like we only like I don't know what he ate. I don't know what he liked for breakfast. You know, LeBron could post on Instagram what he ate for breakfast this morning. We'd be cool.
Yeah, no Taco Tuesdays at the Jordan house.
Tuesdays.
Hell no, definitely no Taco Tuesdays. But it was a time, man. It was a beautiful time, and I just remember even like those last couple of years, I recorded game after game after game, and I still got them on VHS. And I told myself when I had a son, I was going to sit down and let him watch and let him watch these Jordan tapes. And so I finally had my son and we sat down and we watched these tapes, and lo and behold, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to be a Jordan fan. He's a Kobe fan.
Well, but
Kobe is his Jordan. No. Kobe is his Jordan. Kobe is his Jordan. So, and speaking of Kobe, I'm pretty sure, I know you guys probably talked about this, but I knew Kobe was coming on this documentary. I didn't know he was going to talk in the way that he talked. And man, I'm sitting there watching this documentary and I look over my wife and she's wiping her eyes.
She's crying.
She's wiping her eyes. And I'm like, I'm looking at her like, please don't start crying. And the next thing I know, I'm wiping my eyes. And I'm looking at
you know what?
I'm looking at the kids.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, this is random, but it just stuck out to me when you said it. It was like, it's like how Illmatic only has that AZ verse. And it's like the whole album is all, you remember Nas. Obviously, it's all about Nas. But like that little AZ verse, you remember that though. Like it sticks out. It's just like that Kobe cameo. That's the second thing I remember after like just the greatness of Jordan is like, damn, like,
yeah, I wasn't
Kobe respected him like no one else. And he respected, it was like, it was a mutual respect. And you combine that with Jordan's speech at his funeral. It was just like, man.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I wasn't prepared for it. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know how much. And I think I'd read that they had a hard time scheduling. I think they only got like maybe 30 minutes to sit down with Kobe. So
he wouldn't open up. They couldn't get him to talk. That's what I saw.
And I understand. And so, you know, even the little bit that they got was, you know, I just left it saying like, damn, I can't believe Kobe's not here.
Right.
Like, I think about that every now and then. Like, damn, Kobe's gone. Like, even like I saw a clip when he was on what is it, With the Smoke, Steven Jackson and
All the
Smoke. When he was like, just clips from that interview was just like, man, they have a gem for all time with that interview.
I think they got the last real interview with Kobe. I think
they did. I think they did. And the fact that they were so excited to go see him, all that stuff made it good. Man, that was good TV.
So I just, like I said, just really in context, these athletes and basketball players in particular that we've watched over the last 20 years, we've been able to have access to them. Jordan he never gave us that access, and we got a lot of access in this documentary.
And Kyle, I agree with you as far as like, I think social media would have killed Jordan, especially with all the how politicized we are now. Like that was just a little taste of what he got back then. You know what I'm saying? And that was like, I think relative with his home state or whatever. But like, social media would have just killed him. No matter how great he was on the court, they would have.
Even something simple. I mean, like we had. And they didn't touch on it in the documentary, but you know, there was a time where kids were getting killed for Jordans. I mean, like cancel culture on Twitter would have canceled Jordan. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like just for something and Jordan spoke out about it, but it wasn't like he went on a huge, campaign about, stop killing for my shoe. And, like kids were getting killed and the prices of sneakers were still going up. And of course it wasn't his fault, but to your point, Nick, social media would have, Jordan was able to get away with a lot of stuff that our modern day athlete couldn't even dream about.
Because he was the first. I mean, he was the first. So when you're the first at anything, you know, you're going to have the advantages and you're going to have the burden of being the first. You know what I mean? So it's a gift and a curse. But you brought up a good point. But you brought up a good point, Kyle. Talk to me about the social activism part, because that's always been a much kind of debated part, you know, especially in our community. You know, I mean, we always have that conversation. What responsibility did Jordan have? I had a rant about this on one of the episodes that I reviewed. I think it was like episodes 5 or 6, right, where the whole, you know, Jordan, you know, did he do enough and all that. I had a rant after those episodes. Yeah, exactly. With the elections for Congress in North Carolina. I want to get your guys' opinion on this, because, you know, there's been a lot of debate as far as like what role do athletes play, or celebrities, entertainers, whatever, famous people in general. What role do they play and what obligations do they have in speaking out, being kind of using their platforms, being these figures to speak on these things? Where do you guys stand on the whole thing with Jordan? I mean, do you guys think the criticism is fair, a little unfair? Where do you guys kind of lie on the ideological spectrum of that?
I thought it was. I thought it was. Some of it is warranted because he was a huge figure, and I think that statement, that off-color joke or whatever that he made, that, you know, will be in his obituary, or a column about his obituary, you know, about Republicans buying sneakers. But at the same time, again, you have to remember context. In 84, 85, 86, our athletes were just athletes. They didn't really speak out a lot about stuff. I mean, like, I don't know what, you know, Jerry Rice's political affiliation was. I don't know what, you know, David Robinson's political affiliation was. So, you know, to ask Jordan to be the guy who, you know, would get up and, let's say, publicly support Jesse Jackson as he's running for president in 1988, you know, that might be asking a lot. And to be honest, a lot of those guys were, you know, just really single-handedly focused on their job. They weren't worried about, you know, endorsements, or they weren't worried about this or that. They were just worried about staying in their respective leagues and do whatever they could, you know, to survive. Could he have done more? Yes, he probably should have done more and said more, because he did have a huge platform. But I don't necessarily knock him all the way. I think I just realized that Jordan was Jordan. You know what I'm saying? And so in saying that, and I always stop when I try to compare Jordan and LeBron, but what LeBron has done off the court, I think, will far supersede anything that he'll ever do on the court. And that's saying a lot, because LeBron has not, he's taken that platform and he's done so much more. And in doing that, it's a sign of the times. This is the time that, you know, I guess kind of dictates that. Jordan came up in a time where, again, I mean, for all that Magic has done, I don't know if Magic voted for Ronald Reagan. I don't know that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I've never heard Magic speak out about Ronald Reagan or the Bushes. You know what I'm saying? But nobody never said any, or Larry Bird for that matter. So I think we have to kind of keep up some of that in context, because at that time, we didn't necessarily look to athletes to speak out. And one thing that we always have to keep in mind is that we always want athletes to speak out as long as they're speaking for us. But the minute that they say something that, you know, that they, you know, say something about somebody that we don't like, you let some athlete say, you know, that they're down with Trump. Let some black athletes say that they're down with Trump. You know, I mean, if Steph Curry said he was down with Trump, we'd kill Steph Curry. You know what I'm saying? So but we can't say, well, we want them to speak out and then criticize them if they're not saying what it is that we want them to say. So it's, like I said, to answer your question, you're right. I think he should have done more, but I also think we have to keep some of that stuff in context, because that was an era where we really didn't ask athletes to, even though there were athletes that did speak out, we really didn't ask athletes to do a lot.
I think for me, it's more about, I love, you said context. This documentary gave context to pretty much everything that Jordan went on in his career during that run. And it showed that he didn't have it in his heart to do that. Mm-hmm. And for me, that made me change my whole perspective on like black athletes have to, throw up the fist whenever some injustice is going on, because to me, it's like, if it's not in your heart, it's going to come out. Because we've seen like how, I think Kyle, you may be alluded to it, like how certain athletes, they'll come out and speak about something and then they not really see it all the way through, or they're not really down with it as what we thought they were. And they get crucified for like that. Like I'm thinking of Malcolm Jenkins, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like someone who is very political and is very involved, but still gets called as, a sellout. And Kyle, to answer your question about Jerry Rice, that Popeye's chicken commercial didn't help him out. None, as far as his political. But I'm just saying, but for me, it's just like, if you're an athlete, if it's not in your heart, it's not in your heart. So just don't do stuff. Because I think a lot of people nowadays with this whole PR thing, and maybe their agents is like, look, you can use this social media aspect, this activism aspect to boost your career. Like, look at what it did for Cat. They'll start pointing at other people and be like, you can do it too. And like, nah, if you're just focused on the game, like how Jordan was, he's like, I'm just here to play basketball. Now I really want to do. I don't want to take any attention away from that, because I'm not an expert in that. I'm an expert in this. And sometimes you, just like that Dave Chappelle joke, like sometimes you don't want to hear from Ja Rule about shit. Like you want to just hear from the experts.
That's true. That is a very good point. I think we have to be mindful of that. And sometimes athletes, they want to say, but like you said, some of them, to be honest, aren't even qualified to talk about some of these things that they're, asked to talk about. And I think Jordan could have and should have done his research, and he should have done more. And, he's going to get criticism for it. And I think rightfully so. But I think a lot of times, people, they hung on to that quote because, again, up until that documentary, a lot of people didn't know that was just an off-color joke, if you will. And how it got out, nobody knows. Well, I mean, they have their suspicions.
It was Horace Grant. We know how it got out.
Exactly. They said Horace Grant was dropping dimes. And I mean, like that whole Jordan Rules book, which I read back in the day, a lot of the team secrets got out to Sam Smith, the author, who actually appeared on the documentary, which I thought was interesting because, to my knowledge, after Sam Smith wrote that book, Michael Jordan never spoke to Sam Smith again. And Sam Smith was the beat writer for the Chicago Bulls for many years when Jordan was there. So how Jordan gave the green light for him to be on there was interesting in and of itself. But yeah, it was you're right. It's crazy. That's what they're saying, that Horace Grant was the snitch.
And he telling that bold-faced lie on national TV.
You know what's crazy is all before I was secretly against him for that part, and I say secretly because I was one of the biggest Jordan fans there was, like most people, and I didn't like criticizing him, even though I felt like it was a mistake for him not to speak out. But then the more I thought about it, the more I went into the mindset of, yes, responsibility necessarily. I mean, I see where people can say that's their responsibility, but at the same time, if it's like saying he should be a rocket scientist when he didn't go to school for that. That ain't what he knows. That's not his area of expertise. So he has the right to kind of stay away from things that he wouldn't be educated enough to speak on, if that makes sense. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable talking about that stuff because he just didn't know enough about it to talk about it. And I kind of got to give him a pass for that. I don't know. I get the point about him and, the Republicans buy shoes too. I get that money point. But at the same time, man, everybody is not a role model. Everybody is not a hero. Everybody is not put on this earth to be an activist. They're just not. Some people, that's just not in them. So we can't expect, just like LeBron is not a killer, we can't expect him to ever be that. He's just going to be him. And that's kind of how Jordan was. He just did his thing. And his thing was to be the best basketball player on this planet. And that's what he set out to do, and that's what he did. So to me, I like I said, for a long time I was thinking, dudes, you need to say something. But now I get it. He just didn't feel like he was qualified, I don't think. So that's
perfect. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, I've always been a little split on the whole social activism part because in one part, like I'm politically active. I read, I try to educate myself. I try to get involved. And I mean, I work for a local government. So, you know, I'm that person, but I've always felt like it's unfair to project your opinions and your thoughts and your personality and things that interest you on everybody else and to feel like, well, everybody else should have that stance or everybody else should be like I am and have the same political thoughts that I am. You know, some people are just not qualified. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not just giving him a pass, but he's just not. I mean, I don't know if y'all noticed, but like recently with the whole shooting of the kid in I forgot the whole shooting with the Ahmad. Yeah, exactly. I was blanking out on his name. The whole Ahmad shooting. You know, Mike Epps came out and said something that pissed a lot of black people off about basically saying that, you know, black people need to stop killing each other. You know, the whole black on black, you know, that thought that, you know, somehow black on black crime has anything to do with, you know, white people killing us. Like it's just stupid and just whatever. But Mike Epps, somebody who's beloved, respected, he said that. And that's an example of someone that just isn't qualified to talk about these issues on a grand scale. Like we all love Mike Epps. Nobody believes that Mike Epps is a coon or Uncle Tom or anything like that. He just isn't qualified to speak on these things. And some people are just not. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just not their strong suit. And the other thing about it is too, like this idea that like an athlete, a black athlete on a high level, that they owe us something. Like they owe us the ability to come out and speak out on certain things. No, they don't. Their job is to go out there and entertain us. Their job is to go out there and play basketball, play football, play baseball, play tennis, whatever their sport is, right? That's what they owe us. They owe us to go out there and play hard every single night. On top of it, after that, it is what it is. And to have this expectation that every athlete is going to be Muhammad Ali. And I bring up Muhammad Ali because, you know, the first thing you said, well, you know, Muhammad Ali spoke out, Jim Brown spoke out. You got to think about it. The 1960s and 1980s, that's 20 years. That's almost a full generation of athletes that came after Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, you know, Kareem, all those guys that were heroes in the 60s for civil rights, right? You know, look at the backlash that Muhammad Ali faced. Look at the backlash that Jim Brown faced. You know, it's good now in 2020 to have this romanticized view of what Muhammad Ali did, and everybody just praises him universally now. But you got to think back in the 1960s, 1970s. I mean, these guys were vilified. Ali was called a traitor, a communist. You know, he hates America. Blah 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 blah. Like all of these things that were thrown, all these shots that were thrown at Muhammad Ali. It wasn't until Muhammad Ali really got sick that the tide turned and the opinion on him really kind of changed. And of course, 10 years after the fact, everybody knew the Vietnam War was just a fucking joke and a disaster. That's what really changed the conversation around that. But a lot of those athletes from the 60s, like those guys were vilified by America. So there was a generation of athletes, I think, that came up that were coached and were trained like, yo, you do not touch politics. You don't speak on anything. You know, you may have thoughts, you may have opinions. Don't touch that shit. And I think that's where the Republicans buy sneakers comment came from. It was like, yo, I'm not touching that. Like my job is to play sports, you know, build my brand and that be it. And some folks may not like that. And that's cool. We can have a conversation about whether that's the right approach, whether that's the wrong approach. But this idea that like Michael Jordan had to be Michael Jordan and Malcolm X at the same time is just, it's always been ludicrous to me. Like, I just don't understand it. And I think, and I think it was Kyle, it may have been, or it may be even Nick, that like now social activism is cool. Now social activism, being woke, is almost a PR ploy now. You know, it helps your brand that LeBron speaks out on police violence. You know what I mean? It helps your brand that, you know, Damian Lillard speaks out on this issue or Russell Westbrook speaks out on that issue. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's unfair to judge these guys like Judge Jordan, you know, nobody ever said, like Kyle brought this up. Nobody ever said something about Magic. I've never heard Magic political leanings. You know, I've never read about Magic Johnson being very active on. I mean, I know he does a lot of things for for the black community, helps small businesses owned by women.
I think that's the reason why.
So he does do different things. And to be fair, you know, Jordan has donated a lot of money to, you know, charities. He's donated, so he's done different things. Of course, he hasn't been out in front with it or out in the open with it. But where's Magic Johnson's political thoughts? Like, I want to see what Michael Jackson, what did Magic Johnson think about, the LA riots in '92? What was Clyde Drexler's opinion on what was going on in the early '90s? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was, we all know Chuck was out there, but I mean, like, I just think it's unfair to just to judge these guys retroactively under the view of 2020 America and think that, well, LeBron speaks up, so all these guys should have spoken up 20 years ago. That's just not fair.
Well, you know what it is too, Manny? I think part of the issue is that the question was never asked. Like, you didn't know what your athlete, where they stood politically, because they were never asked. And even Jordan, he was never asked. This was an off-color comment that he made as far as jokingly on a bus. So he was even amongst, so that's like him, dropping the N-word in a room of his teammates. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that's said, it's not really supposed to get out of the room, but, somebody like Michael Jordan, who was, like I said, very, very protective of his image. Like, and I'll give you an example. Jordan's first son was born, and Jordan was not married to his then wife, Juanita. Mm-hmm. He tried, or his people tried to hide the fact that, that she was pregnant, because they didn't want him to have a quote unquote kid out of wedlock. Now, I mean, how common is it now for somebody to have a child out of wedlock? I mean, nobody bats an eye about it, but they were so image conscious. So I said that in saying that for someone to be that image conscious, or at least their camp to be that image conscious, no, you're not going to ask him about what he thinks about Reagan and, the war overseas or whatever, like the war on drugs. You're not going to ask him those kind of questions. And so, and honestly, athletes, generally speaking, weren't asked those kind of questions. So it's kind of revisionist history. It's a part of his history. Yeah. And like I said, he'll always be kind of criticized for it. I think he could have done more, but I don't hold, I'm not going to beat him over the head because he didn't speak up. He just didn't. And to be honest, that's just not who he was.
And I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. That was 1980s America. That was the Reagan extra conservatism, conservatism at its peak, the family, 40 acres and a mule. Like, that was what America, the image of America was. Like, that's what it was. And then, of course, you got this black athlete who appeals across racial lines. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like it's just unfair I feel like that criticism has always been unfair. I get it. I understand it. Like, would I wanted Jordan to speak up more on issues? Absolutely. Of course, everybody. I think all of us in this panel wanted that, right? But I also can't blame the guy for saying, and I respect what he said. Like, I didn't speak up on things that I wasn't qualified on. And I respected what he said. Like, I don't know this man. Like, everybody wants me to support him because he's a black man, but I don't know his politics. I don't know where he's taking money from. Maybe he's taking money from corporations that do bad things by our people. So like, so how does that, okay, maybe because he's not a racist, that makes him better, but still, like, I really get upset with that, because I think it's just an unfair barometer to judge an athlete. And also, like you said, what if he came out and said, yeah, I'm a Republican. I support, I support, old boy that was running against, Gant, okay.
Right. Jesse Helms.
You know what I'm saying? Jesse Helms. Like, okay, so then you would have hated him. So you hate him for not speaking up, and then you would have hated him for speaking up against the black candidate. And
let me tell you something, man. Somebody from South Carolina, Jesse Helms, put the R in racist.
Yes.
I just look. I didn't even know anything about Jesse Helms, but I looked at it as soon as they posted that white man on the TV screen. I just knew this dude was just.
And what's interesting was Harvey Gantt said that, he said even if Jordan had endorsed him, he didn't think he was going to win anyway.
Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Do you think Carroll in Timbuktu County, North Carolina? Well, I was compelled to vote for
but Jordan's
racist. But Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan and those pair of sixes really swayed me. Like, no, that wasn't gonna happen. Like, I don't know. It just bothers me, man.
To your point, like, even when you just said that, it makes it stand out even more as far as comparing back then to today. Is like, yeah, the athletes today are more encouraged to speak out, but like you said, like, LeBron tried to support Hillary, and obviously we see how that went. Like some of these athletes, like they do have a voice, but just because you have a voice doesn't mean you have influence. Like I think that we get that confused a lot. And I think with the whole Magic Johnson thing, like I think he get a pass because he was the face for HIV and all that stuff. I think once you became the face for that, like it was like, all right, bro, you don't have to say nothing else. You know what I'm saying? Like, we happy you just here.
Yeah.
Type shit.
Yeah. That's true. That's a really good point. Good point. Yeah. I mean, and look at LeBron supported Hillary Clinton. I mean, I hate Hillary Clinton, so I can, if I really wanted to, I could poke holes at that support, like the whole Super Predators comment, all the things that she's done. Like, really, this is the person that you gonna hit your wagons to? I mean, so that's the problem. You're never going to satisfy anybody when you start speaking up on social issues. Because like I was telling go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, when I was telling my co-host on one of the shows that I did earlier, right? I was like, you're never going to satisfy anybody because you're going to have folks that love Jordan that are Republicans that are going to get pissed off because he speaks out against Republican issues. Then you're going to have the folks in the black community that if Jordan if he doesn't go full militant, they're going to say he's a coon and a sellout and this, that, and the other. Then you're going to have the folks in the middle that are like, oh, I don't want my athletes talking sports, just shut up and dribble crowd. Like, you're never going to satisfy anybody. So you might as well just shut the hell up. And just, you know what? I'm going to just go out there and play basketball.
That was my exact point. I was going to say, regardless, it's a double-edged sword. He's going to lose either way it goes. So the best thing he can do is just remain calm, be the best basketball player he can be, and sell those shoes, man. And you see where it landed him. He's a billionaire at this point. So,
it didn't hurt his pockets.
Right. And honestly, if he had spoke up, maybe he wouldn't be in this position. So, he did the right thing, man. Regardless, he did the right thing. He did what he needed to do to feed his family and to keep it moving. And he didn't go against our people, but he didn't get involved in things, like I said, that he wasn't qualified to speak on. That ain't his area of expertise. Yes, Jordan was the greatest basketball player in the world, and if there was one shot left to take, I'd rather him take it than anybody else. But if I needed some brain surgery, I don't want Jordan in the room. You see what I'm saying? That's kind of how I look at that, man. And
absolutely.
And that's it. No,
yeah, absolutely, man. I didn't want to rant too much about that, but I mean, even now, I mean, you still hear that conversation happening. You still see that a popular discussion piece, like, oh, Jordan's a sellout. Oh, Jordan didn't do nothing. I'm just like, what was this man supposed to do? Be Mahatma Gandhi? Like, that's what he was supposed to do? Like, lead us to the promised land? Like, which with a pair of 11s on, like with a pair of Concords on, you know, lead us to the promised land? Like, all right, I got it. Like, whatever, man. Just kind of running through some of the talking points of the series. What did you guys think how they handled the whole treatment of the teammates and his kind of philosophy on leadership and all that? Do you guys think they handled that well? Do you think Jordan handled that well? How did you guys feel about that? I'll start with Nick.
Oh, I thought it was it was for the old timers, pretty much. Right? I'm gonna call you out. All right, since I'm the young buck on the show. But it was just more about like, this is how basketball used to be played back in my day. This is what leadership looks like back in my day. None of this trophies for everybody. You had to hard work. The best player on the court gonna give his blood, sweat, and tears. So you should do at least that. It was basically that. And again, like going back to what I was referencing earlier when I was talking about in comparison to LeBron, like you saw what it was like when Scottie tried to take over and be the leader and the results of that. You know what I'm saying? So it made it even more like cement Jordan's legacy as far as like, he is the number one guy. Like, you look up to him. If you do it his way, you're 9 times out of 10, you're going to win the game, or you may go 6 for 6. So it was just like, even that whole fight with Steve Kerr, like that famous fight, like we didn't even know Steve Kerr for the first punch. You know what I'm saying? And then Jordan just knocked him real quick to show you who he was. But it made them closer. You know what I'm saying? The way he came at, Scott Burrell, how he was like, I got to push these guys because I need to know when we in the trenches, I need to know you got my 6 or something like that. So it's just like, it was just all about that. And I appreciated that, but I could tell they were just laying the Jordan, like, myth and all that shit. They was laying the sauce on heavy. Like, you can't watch those scenes and be like, damn, man, Jordan, that nigga.
Yeah, absolutely. What about y'all? Shep?
Well, for me, like you said, like Nick said, man, I grew up in that era. So to hear people talk like that and to be uplifted by people that are greater, that's an everyday thing, man. If my son, I tell my son that all the time, I'm like, man, if you had to come to the gym back in my day, boy, you leave crying every day because, there was no mercy. Jordan was talking regular. In my opinion, the way he talked to them and the way he treated them, it was regular to me. That was what I was used to. But like Nick said, also, it made them greater. There's certain athletes that elevate the people around them. I remember when Mike Vick played for the Falcons. To me, those teams were trash. Even though I'm not a Falcons fan, they're trash teams. But because he had that certain swagger, that certain confidence in himself when he would walk around, because I worked in Lennox at the time, spending a lot of time around those guys, watching the way he carried himself made people play better than where they were. So everybody stepped up a level because of him being the leader. Same thing with Jordan. When you played with him, he made you play outside yourself a little bit so you could step up and hit that big shot. The John Paxsons, the Steve Kerrs, you know what I'm saying? Judd Bushler, for example. Judd Bushler didn't belong in the NBA, but he played with Jordan. I remember him making shots. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Randy Brown. Randy Brown was one of my favorite players. He was a dog. But Randy Brown was in the league because of Jordan. He, you know what I'm saying? Jordan made him a championship player. So in saying that, man, his leadership was unquestioned. You really can't even question that part. And like I said, a lot of people may have had a problem with how he talked to people, but that's how he was raised, and damn it, that's how they did it. And that was it. That was normal.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle?
I mean, let's just call it what it is. Jordan was an asshole. Yeah. I mean, there's no, there's no easy way to say it. He was an asshole, and I think it was probably Will Perdue that said that. But the thing that you have to take from that, and I'll direct this to Nick, it wasn't necessarily about old school or anything like that, but you knew that he was going to get you where you needed to be. Now, yes, some players, they needed to be pushed. Some players needed to be, put a foot in their ass. Some players need to be patted on the back. And when you're a leader, you have to kind of figure out how to approach each guy like that. We don't live in a time where you can berate your teammates, because the first time that Tom Brady comes and cusses out Rob Gronkowski like that and calls him a hoe, Gronk gonna probably swing on him. You know what I'm saying? It ain't gonna be a whole bunch of talking. I mean, I don't even think LeBron talks that way to JaVale McGee, right?
No.
So, and we all have our own opinions of what JaVale McGee is as a basketball player. And I'm not saying that to excuse it, but that was one of the things in the documentary, because I know Jordan and I follow Jordan and I knew a lot about the team. That was no surprise to me that he treated his teammates like that. This is something that's been, and a lot of this, if you read the Jordan rules, a lot of this stuff came out in the Jordan rules. But if you play team sports and if you're of a certain age, you probably played with an asshole. Maybe not somebody like that, but you play with some, and if you play team sports, everybody on the team ain't your friend. Mm-hmm. I would say probably Jordan's closest friend on the team was Pippen. And Pippen always wasn't his closest friend. I mean, they got to be really close and got closer as Scotty got better. But those first couple, Scotty's first year, they weren't tight like that.
Yeah, you know what though, Nick? His closest friend was Oakley till he left.
Exactly. Oak was his guy. But think about it like this. This whole documentary, we don't get any interaction. There's no best friend. The best friend, the guy that they said is his best friend, is on the payroll. Jordan rolled with some old security guards, older men. He was Jordan was like an old soul. He was an old soul. So it's his treatment of his teammates, could it have been better? And I know that he said prior to this documentary going out, he was going to be worried about how people would have perceived him. But deep down, he don't care. I mean, I don't think he still cares about how he's viewed, but back then it was a means to the method of as far as his madness. So if he knew that it was going to result in him pushing his teammates to get the best out of them so that they could win, he'd do that. And obviously they were cool with it because nobody, only a couple of them stepped to him. I mean, if I'm Scott Burrell, I'm not taking that. You're not going to be calling me no hoe at practice.
Yeah, we'd have had a fight. Yeah, we'd have been boxing. Yeah, no doubt. One thing I do disagree with you, Kyle. I do think he cares about it. I think, and that's what I think. And I was going to ask y'all what y'all interpret the crying. What did y'all interpret from him crying when he was talking about his treatment of his teammates and his leadership approach? And I think it does. I think deep down it does hit him. I mean, he's human. We all look at Jordan as this godlike figure in a lot of ways, but he's human. And it does affect you to some point, like that people talk about you as being this like asshole and this terrible person. Cause even before he started like tearing up and really getting emotional about it, you could tell like, he was getting a little defensive about it. Like he was like, well, I don't think I was an asshole. I think I was a good teammate. Like, I think all these years, I think it has like bothered him. Like, I think it's bothered him low key. I think back then it didn't bother him because he felt like you said, it was a means to win. I needed to win. But I think post-retirement, I think it finally hit him like, I probably, if I didn't treat my teammates this way or if I didn't behave this way, it was like a gift and a curse type of thing where it's like, I needed to treat them this way because that was my leadership approach and this is what I wanted to get out. I wanted to win. So this is what I had to do. But I feel like he looks back like I paid the price in other ways. I paid in price on how I'm perceived by being this asshole. I paid the price that I don't have these relationships with these players that, that I might have had I been nicer to them. So I think that was what the emotion came out of him was. I think part of it was defending his behavior, and then part of it was also like saying like, yeah, it does bother me. Like it does bother me that people feel that way because I'm not like I didn't just do this because I'm just naturally an asshole. I did it because that's what I felt like I had to do to try to be the best basketball player that I can be and get these guys in line. Now, we can all disagree and we can all have debates and arguments about it, whether that was the right approach or not. But yeah, that's what I think. I think it did bother him.
Yeah, he was definitely misunderstood, but it worked. He got 6 championships out of it. So
right.
It was the right approach,
Yeah, it was the right approach. And leadership comes in all shapes and sizes, man. I'm sure all of you guys can attest. We've worked for asshole bosses. We've worked for good, solid, down-home people bosses. We've worked for guys in the middle. Leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. Like I'm someone that believes that I don't think you have to be an asshole to be a great leader. I feel like you could be a good person and be a great leader. Some people staunchly believe that you got to be tough. You got to be an asshole. You can't take no prisoners. You can't be friends. A lot of people feel that way. It's kind of like parenting. How some people, they want to be best friends with their kids. Some people want to be tyrants to their kids. Some people kind of want to be in the middle, the good cop, bad cop. Like leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. And I hate when we try to criticize leadership like, oh, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. But yeah, but that's not you. Leadership is personality based. So,
and I would even say like, to me, for one, like Jordan is like the poster child for like winning cures all. Like this whole documentary, you could point out like the gambling, to him possibly being attached to his daddy dying, to
perfect point. Yep.
Punching Steve Kerr. He won on Father's Day, so that kills up there. He won against the greats. He beat Magic, his first ring. Like everything used like that. The timeline of everything that happened as far as bad, there was like a great outcome out of that. He was on the dream team. He won the gold medal. Like he got he three-peated. He went to go play baseball. He came back, three-peated again. Like. It was like he had so much success even in the middle of his lows that you can't really say like, damn, that really was a bad moment, but he ended up being great because of it. So it's just like, how do you sour on it that much? And then on top of that, it's just like, I feel like with Jordan, I think this documentary, when you were talking about Manny, it was like, he had to defend himself. I think it was just more of just saying like, I don't know if it was the defense. It was just like his philosophy. And just like, Phil Jackson has his philosophy on things. And I think it was just more about him saying like, can you get people in line when it ain't time to fuck around? You know what I'm saying? And that was his mentality. Like, but his mentality was like, we never fucking around. Like, I gotta always keep you in line. But there's other, but like, man, like how you were saying, like, there's other ways of leadership. It's just that at the end of the day, like, can you get people in line when it ain't time to fuck around? And I think most people are used to being around assholes like that. If it's never time to fuck around, then we're always in line. It's like that line that says, you ain't never got to get ready if you stay ready.
Stay ready. Yep. Stay ready all the time. Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Nick. I think, to answer your question, Manny, about him tearing up, I thought that was very interesting because, to me, it shows just how much he wanted to win. Like he was just driven by winning. And I think one of the things that we all could probably take from this documentary is that how much, he won, he had all of these accolades, but he really, really loved the game of basketball. Like his love is unparalleled for the game of basketball. And I think one of the things that I took away was, he wanted people to love the game the way that he does. Well, that's part of the problem. One, we're on your team. We're not as good as you. So we can't do what it is you do. And we're not going to have the same love that you have. We love the game. Yeah, we're here. You couldn't be on that Bulls team and just be there along for the ride. He wasn't going to allow that and he knows that, every team is going to have one or two guys that's just there for the ride. And he's like, no, I had blood, sweat, and tears. No, Randy Brown, you're not going to get on this team and just ride my coattail. You're going to have to bust your ass because we're going to depend on you at some point. We don't know when, but I need you to be ready. Scott Burrell, I need you to be ready. You didn't have to go against the Pistons in 88, 89, and 90 and take those L's like I did. And ultimately, he knew that when the Bulls won, he won. When the Bulls lost, he lost. So, I think more than anything, that moment of him tearing up, because he didn't tear up when he talked about his dad.
Right.
Him talking about winning made him that passionate where he had to tell him to stop recording. I thought that was a very key moment in the documentary.
That's a good point. Damn, I didn't even think about that.
Good point. You picked that up. Yeah. That's a good. Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as he's processed his dad's death, which I thought was, that time, man, was crazy. Just living through that time, man, it was because his dad literally disappeared for like 2 weeks. And nobody could find him. And where they actually found his body actually wasn't that far from where I grew up. So, it was just, and keep in mind when we're watching a documentary, you're seeing Connie Chung, Tom Brokaw, this Dan is national news. Yeah. Dan Rather. This isn't just Sports Center. This was the lead story on the national news, the 6 o'clock
every night. Yeah.
So every night. So it was bugged out. And, when they found him dead and everything.
They had the same coverage for when he retired the first time. All those cameras, it was like, bro, this ain't local, this is national.
I was in college. I was in college when he retired the first time, and everything stopped.
It did.
It was one of those moments where people could tell you where they were. Cats wasn't going to, me and Shelton was in school with the cats wasn't going to class. Everybody was around the TV. Everybody was around the TV. And it was just because he was walking away and he never said, well, look, I'm done. My dad's dead,
right?
All this stuff. And, and that going back to what we talked about earlier about social media, the notion that his father's death had something to do with his gambling and all this stuff like that. Social media would have crushed. Like Jordan would have probably retired and never come back had he had gone through social media era.
Yeah,
they're running with it now. They're running with it now, and it's 20 years after the fact. You still see conspiracy theorists out there.
Yeah, those kids that killed his dad were just 2 kids that came up on a guy sleeping in a Lexus. That's all it was. They were just 2 kids who, and I think they were like 18 and 19 at the time, and I think one of them may be able to up for parole next year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They don't really get into it that much in the documentary, and rightfully so. But it was crazy. And you felt for him because you didn't, it was just something so random. It was just an old man in a nice car and they spotted him. And I don't even know, we knew very little about it. So we don't even know if he put up a fight for the car, or if they ordered him out of the car and they shot him after he got out of the car. They didn't have to shoot him.
They even knew who he was.
They clearly didn't know who. They admitted that they did not know who he was.
They altered history is what they did.
Yeah, they didn't know who he was. He just happened to be, like I said, think about it like this. You're just going along, and to be honest, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think James Jordan even stopped at a rest area. I think he literally was like on some off road. Yeah, just on the side of the road.
He just on the side of the road.
And keep in mind, this is the 90s. You could literally just pull off on the side of the road and go to sleep and nobody would bother you, especially this part of, South Carolina. North Carolina. So it was crazy, man. It was crazy, and just to see him go through all of that and to leave and then come back, was a lot.
Think about that 4-month span too, of going through the highs of or actually the playoffs start, the gambling, the playing the golf, playing golf to staying up to Atlantic City in between game 1 and game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals, the lows and the coverage of that, to the highs and the highs of winning a championship, a three-peat, the first three-peat since the Celtics, 20-something years after that, right? Then, everything that goes with winning the championship, celebrating, then a couple weeks later, your dad is dead, missing, and then he ends up dead. Then he retires. I mean, just think of that swing of emotion at that time frame where it's just like you're going through the highs of highs and the ultimate lows of lows, man. I mean, that just had to be, and that was the thing that conveyed the most for me, was just like the amount of pressure and the stress that this dude was under. I mean, and the other thing about it is he was the first athlete that was really going through something like that at a national stage like that, where everybody was watching. All the cameras were on him. CBS, NBC, nightly, Dan Rather. I mean, everybody's watching this man's life play out, at that level, that I think that I just think it took a real toll on him. I think it really took a toll. And I always wondered, like, as a kid, like, why did he retire the first time? I mean, obviously we all knew about the wanting to play baseball, the stress of his father dying, the stress of the gambling and stuff and all this stuff. But it never really hit me till the documentary. Like, damn, this dude, I can imagine this dude was just to the point where it's just like, I'm just over it. Like, fuck, that's because I just need to walk away from it.
I think the new era of like mental health is like something that I think it's on a lot of people's minds now lately. Like, you just broke down like mentally, like walking through his shoes, which makes it that commercial that he shot. Like, people wish they could be Michael Jordan. I want to know if they would do that if they lived my life in a day or some shit like that, whatever the quote was.
Yeah.
But it was just like, bro, like you said, in 4 months, I go from a super high to a super low. Like, that would break most people. Some people still processing losing their daddies and on a natural death, let alone like him going missing. Murder, yeah. And it's a murder now. And then now you got to end up playing a basketball game. And that's why it was kind of fucked up, to me at least, was when Phil was like, oh, you're denying society a great gift, but I understand. It was like, nigga, fuck this game. Like, I just lost my pops in a gruesome way. I gave the city 3 titles. Like, what else do I got to do to say, like, I'm good?
Right. And on top of that, you got people criticizing it.
What it is, Nick, at that point in time, even when Jordan's dad got killed, nobody thought that he was going to quit. Because if I'm not mistaken, like, his contract wasn't up or anything like that. So it was the idea of him. I mean, that was like nobody had those thoughts that he would even possibly remotely walk away from the game. And like you said, man, you go from, I mean, just in that 4-month span, you go from the top of the world to the world being crushed, and your best friend is gone. And I mean, like, it'd be different if his dad was old and he, had some type of, disease or something, and he slowly wilted away or whatever, and he got a chance to spend some time with his dad. But I mean, like, he literally goes from talking to his dad one day on the phone and then never hearing from him again, and getting a phone call saying, hey, we found your dad, 3 weeks later in a creek. We found his body. They found the car, I think, like a week later, but they couldn't find the body. So once they found the car, it's almost like we all knew, and there wasn't cell phones and all this stuff like that. So it was a lot. And, to his credit, he bounced back. And I will say this, even as a Jordan and a Bulls fan, I mean, at that time, if he doesn't retire, I don't know that they'll beat the Rockets, or that they'll make it to the finals again. He actually had to retire and take those lumps for him to come back and be a better player.
Yes. He had to reset. And one thing that he said that was like prophetic in that last one was, he said the first 3 championships was physical. And he said the second 3-peat was more his mind. And I was like, mental. Yeah, it was more mental. And I was like, dang, that's really true. Like, he killed you with athleticism and with his grace and his gifts on that first set, but he did need to step away, to reset so he can have the strength and the stamina to finish off strong. And he did that.
And his game changed too. I mean, like,
yes, it did.
Yeah.
Those that you go and watch those first 3 championships, he really wasn't shooting that fade like that. That turnaround jumper, all of that stuff that we saw later, that we saw in Kobe, which was identical. You could tell that Kobe spent like every
hours
day watching Come Fly With Me, but it was like that first title. I'd say probably from like 87 into that first title, he was Air Jordan. He was probably more ground Jordan on the second title run.
Right.
But it was his mind. He was better defensively. He was just smart.
As dominant. It's just
very
as dominant.
much so.
Just as dominant, just as
very
lethal, just as graceful. You know what I mean? It really is amazing. I mean, he really had 2 careers. If you really think about it, he had 2 really careers. It's just and Nick, you brought up something about the stress of going through everything that he was going through at that time, and then you think about everything that's being written in the media. Oh, he's a selfish teammate because he's gambling. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's in the mob, and John Gotti put a hit on his dad, and oh, he's selfish and he's not supporting black politicians, and oh, did his dad get killed as a mob head, and blah 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 blah. I mean, like, all of these things are being said about you that anybody would just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm walking away. Like, you don't appreciate what I'm doing and what I'm giving to the game and what I'm bringing to sports in general. I just lost my dad. I just won a championship. I lost my dad, and you're gonna talk shit about me, and you're gonna basically make this out to be some controversy, some nefarious situation. It just I think it all just kind of came to a head in '93, man. I think that's what it was. I think it really, really just came to a head. Let's move on a little bit. So you watched the 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. Who do you guys blame for the breakup of the Bulls? Do you blame someone in particular, or do you think it was bound to happen anyway?
Bruh, 100% Jerry Krause. I just can't see how it could be anything other than Jerry Krause. I mean, how could you tell that man that under no circumstances could he come back? I think that was totally selfish. Jerry Reinsdorf too, man, because if that's my team, I'm stepping in at that point. That's me saying, whoa, bro, we winning. And even if he's saying we need to change some things so we can prepare for the future, you're winning in the present, and that's the key. I mean, I don't see how this is good.
But to he was the reason, obviously, why they broke up. But I think for what I think you got to give him. We don't remember him in basketball history like this, though. Like, I think that's what another part of this documentary is like.
You mean Jerry Krause?
Yeah, like he built a dynasty, like one of the greatest dynasty in basketball history. Yeah, we look at him like a villain. Like,
wait 1 second, Nick. Let me be the elder statesman and remind you of something. The key piece of the dynasty he did not build was Michael Jordan. Jordan was already
Rod Thorne.
Yeah.
Rod Thorne. So and that was honestly when Jordan would ridicule Krause behind closed doors, he reminded, I was here before you got here. Keep in mind, and if this isn't privilege, I don't know what is. Jerry Krause was a baseball scout.
Yes.
and became the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. Now, if that ain't privilege, I don't know what is. No, but, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he deserves all the credit. I'm just saying he deserves more credit than in basketball history than what I have grown up to know. You know what I'm saying? I know of Jerry West. I know of, all these, like, even Dave Griffin. Like, you know what I'm saying? I know of these people, but Jerry Krause is like, brother, this is the guy behind, like, he drafted Scotty. Am I right? Like, he drafted Scotty. He traded, even though he traded Oakley, he got Horace. Like, he got all these people. Like, he got Rodman. He got Coach. Like, he got all these players that kept the machine going. Like, when Jordan, as much as Jordan said, I was here before you, we remember what it was like before him. It was the cocaine 80s. That's what he talked about. Like, it wasn't shit. So it was just like, and that also fueled Jordan to be who he is. But at the same time, I love how this documentary showed that, like, a lot of people helped Jordan along the way. It wasn't that much because obviously he still had to do what he had to do, but they were able to lay the tracks for him to just keep this train going.
Right.
Well, the problem with that is, Nick, is that, and you're right. You're 100% right. Jerry Krause, really deserves a lot of credit for what he did. And it's unfortunate because he passed away and, he wasn't a favorite person of Jordan's. He wasn't a favorite person of Pippen's. So, the earlier episodes, they don't really show him in a positive light. And, but I think part of the issue is that, Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson, for that matter, what they had is that the Bulls team is the only dynasty to be broken up by itself.
Right.
Like the Celtics were beaten, the Lakers were beaten, the Warriors were beaten. Every dynasty ends with them being beaten. And this Bulls team was never beaten. They were destroyed from the top.
Yes.
And so Jordan is basically saying, like, look, we earned that right to, for somebody to beat us. Who knows? If they come back in 99, if they get Scotty, and if, like Jordan was saying, everybody's on a 1-year deal, even if they did that one more time, maybe they don't get past the Pacers. Maybe they get past the Pacers and the Jazz beat them. I mean, but they earn that right to, go back and compete for that one more title, if you will.
Correct.
But they just never got a chance. And that's the unfortunate thing. And I found it interesting was at the end of the documentary, they're rolling the credits. It says that the Bulls began to rebuild after that. And then what I said was to my son, I said, and they've been rebuilding ever since.
Ever since.
I mean, other than a couple of years with
they had D-Rose. They had D-Rose.
Yeah, okay. And they ran into LeBron.
Yes.
But have the Bulls been back to the Eastern Conference Finals since Jordan? Okay. Have they been to the have they been to the conference finals? I mean, have they been past the second round? No.
And see, that's the thing. And see, for me, and the reason why I blame him so much, he contributed to get the Bulls teams to where they were. But once again, even if Michael had left and you were planning to disband that team, who would you want to lead that team other than Phil Jackson? So my thing is that was just asinine and ridiculous to tell one of the greatest coaches in history, I don't want you back, no matter what.
But look at the ego of him. He had a huge ego. He had an ego almost as big as Michael Jordan to a certain extent, as far as like, I built this thing. I built this whole thing. But this every move I made paid off.
I think for me, and I'm a big fan of Phil's, I gained even more respect for Phil watching this documentary, just kind of looking at the shit he had to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean,
still win. Yeah.
I mean, Rodman comes to him and says, well, hey, I need a vacation. I mean, Scotty's hurt. What do you mean you need a vacation?
Right.
And so he wants to go to Vegas in the middle of the city. I mean, like having to deal with that, having to deal with Mike being an asshole at practice. Pippen was the guy who was, Pippen had his indiscretions and, sitting down in the 1.8 seconds. I mean, Phil dealt with a lot. Yeah, people say, okay, well, yeah, I'd win 11 titles too if I had Jordan and Pippen and Shaq and Kobe.
You'll be fired.
But dealt with a lot, man. And I think even like that story that Steve Kerr told at the end about what they had to do when they wrote down their thoughts on the season and putting it into the fire. I thought that was dope, man. That was like some old OG shit. I was like, wow, that's dope. I was like, man, that would have been great to be a part of. I think, like I said, I love Phil Jackson. I gained a newfound respect for him, just being able to balance all that. And I mean, like, it also says something to me when you start the season and your boss tells you, I don't care what you do, you ain't coming back. So your time is limited. And Phil started off that season giving them their the off-season workout, and it was titled The Last Dance, and that's how we got the name of this this documentary.
Yeah, I think Phil Jackson was doing a lot of drugs back then. That's the only way I can't fathom a normal white man being insane. Man, come on.
Ganja.
Do something, man. Especially because how calm he is. Like, I think those are the only few times I heard him yell and scream or even be like very.
Yeah. Phil ain't that type of guy.
Yeah, like was dealing with them. Like even during crunch time, it was great to see. Like, okay, Phil Jackson can turn it on when he needs to. But yeah, like Kyle, yeah, you're right. Phil Jackson, like, and then not only is he leaving this, but he's entering LA a few years later.
Shaq and Kobe, yeah.
Shaq and Kobe,
and I mean, and they were two young budding stars. And I mean, like, and we saw what he did with them. And I mean, like, like I said, being able to balance all of that, that's a lot, man. Phil dealt with a lot. And I, you know, I'd like to say hats off to him because I don't know how he did it. It's not as easy as people probably think.
So Shelton, you blame Jerry Krause. Kyle, who do you blame? If you had to put money on somebody, who do you blame?
Oh, definitely Krause. Definitely Krause. Krause and Reinsdorf owns some blame too because he's the owner.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Nick?
Oh yeah, I think y'all, like I said earlier, it's Krause for sure. But I was just saying, like, the reason I was bringing up like his resume was just like he almost. It's not like he had the right to destroy it, but I can tell with a guy like an ego like that because throughout the whole documentary they tell you that he has a big ego. Like he wanted to be like, I started this and I ended this. Like that, it's all me. And like to Kyle's point, the Bulls ain't been right since. So say what you want about them, but your best days were with them. And
you know what, Nick? The one thing that Jerry Krause wanted, he'll probably never get, and that's credit.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted the credit. I think one of the things Steve Kerr said early in the, I think it was like in the first episode, he said that Jerry couldn't get out of his own way.
Yes.
And that says a lot about. And he said Jerry had a hard time reading the room. So that tells me you're not a people person. You can't be a great GM if you're not a people person.
Right.
You know, anybody can look at analytics and say, okay, well, hey, if we put this guy here, we do this and we do that, we can make it happen. But it's just, and it's unfortunate because again, Krause isn't alive to defend himself.
Right.
And he comes off, but to Jordan's credit and the director's credit, most of what we hear from Krause comes from his own mouth. So it's not like there are people on here just, crapping on him. We're basically made to, get our own opinion of Jerry Krause through his own words. And so it is what it is.
I blame Jerry Reinsdorf. That's the guy that I'm laying the blame on.
Okay.
I mean, I know you could take shots at Krause and you could take shots at Phil. A lot of people want to say Phil had something to do with it because at the end of the day, Phil didn't want to come back. He wanted a break. I get all that, but to me, Jerry Krause had a duty to keep that organization stable and afloat, and he failed at that. And it was years in the making. It wasn't just the summer of '97. I mean, that was years in the making, from the Scottie Pippen contract, to not putting a rein on Jerry Krause, letting that situation fester and manifest itself so it got out of control. I mean, I blame Jerry Reinsdorf. He is the owner. He's the guy that's signing the checks. He needed to be the adult in the room. He needed to walk in there and say, look, everybody needs to sit the fuck down and we need to work this out or I'm going to make some changes. Somebody's going to leave here. And it's easier to get rid of a Jerry Krause than it is to get rid of a Michael Jordan. It's easier to get rid of a Jerry Krause than it is a Scottie Pippen or a Phil Jackson. I just think, to me, Jerry Reinsdorf is the ultimate culprit here. Like, to me, it's a dereliction of duty that you let that team win 3 championships in a row, 6 championships in 8 years, and within a blink of an eye, you break up that franchise, you break up that organization, you break up that team. I will never get over that. Like, that is just, to me, that is ridiculous to me. When Jerry Krause comes out and says you can go 82-0 and you're still not going to be the coach, you as Jerry Reinsdorf got to be hey Jerry, no. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk this over. We're going to sit, why didn't Jerry Reinsdorf sit down in the summer of '97 and say, hey, Phil, what do you want? What can we do? We love you. You are as much a part of this franchise as anybody else, blah, blah, blah. We want you to be the coach of the Chicago Bulls forever. Here's a 5-year deal. Name your price. Sign it right now. Why didn't Jerry Reinsdorf do that? Why didn't Jerry Reinsdorf say, you know what, Jerry, you need to cut this shit out or you're going to be out the door? You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't Jerry Reinsdorf step in when there was a time and a place to be the adult in the room? Why didn't Jerry Reinsdorf do that? And again, the buck stops with him. We talked about leadership on this episode, right? Leadership is about being the adult in the room, being the CEO, being the man in charge and saying, no, we need to put a stop to this. We need to settle this down. We need to get everybody sitting there. And I think that's what was needed more than anything else. It's just sitting everybody down and just kind of working this out. And at the end of that meeting, if the problems can't be worked out, if Krause is still an idiot, then get rid of Krause. But let this go on all year, let Krause basically run unfiltered, and I know why Jerry Reinsdorf did it, because Jerry Reinsdorf's smart. He's like, oh, I'm gonna put all the blame on Jerry Krause because it's easy to blame Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause has his own people issues anyway, so it's easy to just throw all the blame to him. And Jerry Reinsdorf can sit there and be like, oh, well, it wasn't me. I wanted to keep the team. No, you didn't want to keep the team, because if you wanted to keep the team, you would have offered Phil a contract way before June of 1998. If you wanted to keep the team, you would have talked to Jerry Krause and you would have said, you need to calm the fuck down or you need to get out. You would have made that happen. If Michael Jordan comes out and says, I want to come back, I want to play next year, I want to defend this championship, and the only coach I'll play for is Phil Jackson. You as the owner of the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Reinsdorf, you have a duty to keep that franchise together. So to me, I think it's on Jerry Reinsdorf, man. I don't blame, and I don't even think it comes close. I blame Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Reinsdorf. That's just me.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's easy to blame Krause. It's easy to blame Krause because Krause had his own issues. But to me, Reinsdorf let that shit happen for too long, bro. That's the part that I don't like. So we're gonna wrap up here shortly. Just real quick, what was your favorite part of this whole documentary? Like, give me one scene, moment, whatever that was your favorite part of this documentary.
Man, that's great. I loved every episode, man. Probably. If I had to pick one, it would probably be the one that's obviously one of the most important scenes was Game 6 against Utah. That entire game was like, I know that they're going to re-air it, I think, either tomorrow or maybe Saturday or something. You have to check your local listings. But what was very interesting was just the ebb and flow of that game. The Bulls kind of got off to you could tell they were a little nervous, but Scotty had hurt his back, I think in like game 5, taking a charge against Karl Malone. And so he goes up for a dunk early in the game and he comes down and you see it. His back's just stiffened up. And so Scotty is like, Scottie Pippen was literally just out there. And surprisingly enough, Utah never attacked him. Scotty literally was just limping the whole time. You go look at his box score. He had 8 points. I think he had like 4 assists, 3 rebounds, something like that. But he was out there as a decoy. But just now, the Bulls played so much better just having him out there. But he literally was limping up and down the court. And then obviously, Jordan, I think Kukoc had like 16 points. He was the only other person in double figures. And Mike, goes up for, I think, 45, I think. But that last sequence, that was perfect, man. That him getting the 2-for-1, the layup, which I thought he got fouled on the layup, being able to come down on the defensive end, strip Karl Malone, get the ball. And what's always key that people really don't pay attention to is that, Phil Jackson doesn't call a timeout there. Yeah. He feels like, okay, well, we can get a shot off without having them reset or set up a defense. And then, of course, Jordan, with the shot over Russell in, this game. So, yeah, that's probably my favorite moment, just that sequence of Game 6. Well, Game 6, period, but the sequence of Game 6 was dope.
What about you, Nick? Favorite moment of this entire documentary?
For me, it was when Gary Payton was talking about that finals match with MJ. That was just, it's again about, like, I like how, man, you said, like, Jordan had 2 careers. Like, you got the Air Jordan and you got like I guess more of a serious tactician Jordan, as far as he'll just break you down. And I think that was the more mental side, because you would think that, like, when Gary was like, man, we won 2 games in a row, you know what I'm saying? If we would have done it my way, we probably could have made some noise. And he was like, man, hell nah. That series was over. But the moment we tipped off in game 1, I was just in my head, like, and it's crazy, like, Jordan can be in his head and lose 2 games, and then, like, once he gets it right back, oh yeah, I'm gonna close out this series. It's just like, it was just, but I love hearing GP talk shit, so I can hear him talk shit all day, but just to hear him telling George Carlin to be like, man, shut the fuck up and let me do me. That was my favorite part of the doc.
What about you, Shel?
Mine is what we talked about earlier, the part where he broke down when he was explaining his passion behind why he did what he did and all that stuff. And the reason being is I consider myself definitely a competitor. I'm a fierce competitor in life. And everything I do, I'm competitive like that too. I ain't to his level yet, though. I strive to be at that level. So watching him do that, yeah, that's my part. Because I can relate, like I said, a little bit, because I take notes on everything, and I'm always shooting for whoever is above me at anything. Not hate at all, but just competitiveness and trying to be the best that I do, whatever I do. So I got that part. When he cried, I understood. I almost cried with him at that point because I understood so much.
Yeah, I think for me would be that part for sure. Talking about his leadership philosophy, the treatment of his teammates. I really enjoyed that part. I also enjoyed episodes 1 and 2, just kind of the rise, the come up, from Wilmington all the way to going to North Carolina to the first couple years in the NBA. I love the story of how basically the Jordans came to be. All praise to Mama Jordan. She was the one that gave the shove to go see Phil Knight in Oregon, and here we are. Here we are. I just enjoyed everything. If I had to pick one thing, definitely him talking about his father winning the Father's Day championship. It's just very emotional. Anyone who's lost their father, I think can relate to that. That was my favorite. That was my favorite part of the entire documentary.
You know what? That always amazes me, man, because they got in the locker room. Like, what happened? You don't really see it in the documentary, so I want to kind of give some context for those who listen that weren't around when it happened. But they win the game, and it's championship. They win in Chicago. Jordan gets the ball, and because he snatched it, while Randy Brown was trying to get the ball, I don't know. I mean, he had no business around the ball. Mm-hmm. So Jordan, as they're setting up to, present the trophy or whatever like that, Jordan goes into the locker room and he is on the floor bawling. I mean, you could hear when the cameraman goes in, and like I said, I don't know how the cameraman got in there, but most people have only seen still shots, but I remember watching that live, and you could actually hear him crying. I mean, like it sounded like he was wailing, and he was just because it was Father's Day. They won the title. He had obviously so many emotions, and to your point, and he actually referenced it too, Nick. I'm gonna keep it real. The Bulls really should have swept the Sonics. If they had put Gary Payton on them, the results probably would have still been the same. But the Bulls clearly took their foot off the gas.
It was 3 blowouts.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and I don't think that people really understand it, but yeah, he that moment, man, it was very, I mean, like, if you watched it live, you probably would have cried because it was just like, I mean, and here was like, I remember watching it and then thinking about my father's still here, and it's like, it kind of tugs at your heart, but yeah, and so he did that and he got himself together. And then by the time they did a couple of commercials or whatever like that, he was back on the podium, and Ahmad Rashad pulled him to the side. He did a quick interview, and he said, like, this one's for Daddy. And he still was I mean, he was still snot crying, at that point. And it was weird because we had never seen that side of Jordan before, but rightfully so. I mean, he was very emotional.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask y'all a quick question?
Go ahead.
Who would y'all have wanted to see on the documentary that was not shown at all, didn't get interviewed?
That's a good question.
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. The great Luke Longley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I heard that they wanted to interview Luke, but Luke is like a basketball coach in Australia, and they said for budget concerns they couldn't. So basically, they didn't have the money to fly to Australia to go interview Luke as. But much props to the director, man. I mean, this documentary, I know a lot of people know that, the first 8 episodes were released online, and because that's all that they had. When this aired 5 weeks ago, it wasn't done. They just finished editing it last Thursday. So,
remember, this wasn't supposed to come out till June. So they still had time.
Exactly.
They didn't think they would have to release it this early.
Exactly. So, but yeah, Luke Longley is probably the only person I would have, because I think they got everybody.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody.
For me, I would have wanted to hear from Jordan's ex-wife as far as like dealing with it from that side, the family aspect. Like Kyle said,
Nick.
You trying to be petty?
Let me let you in a little secret, Nick. Jordan had to pay his ex-wife like excess of $150 million in their settlement. She wasn't going nowhere near this.
Right.
Even if he had invited her, she wasn't going nowhere near this.
I just want to see what she got to say. That's what this was supposed to be the uncut, raw, you know what I'm saying, of Michael Jordan. Who's more uncut and probably her?
No, I'm with you, Nick. Like I would have. I know, obviously, for obvious reasons, we weren't going to hear from her. But even his wife now, like I wanted to see, and it kind of it segues into my next question of like, what do y'all wish y'all would have seen, or what was maybe not things that y'all didn't like, but maybe disappointed y'all about the documentary. For me, I wanted to see more of Jordan's family life. Like I wanted to see more of his kids. I wanted to see his kids, like how they felt about all of this. I know they did an interview with Good Morning America. That's really interesting. If you guys are listening, you want to go check it out. It's online. It's on YouTube. The Jordan kids kind of talk about, just kind of growing up with a famous father. But I wanted to see more of that. Like I probably would want to see like all three of the kids. I know the twin girls, I believe, are like 4 or 5 years old. So obviously they don't have any frame of reference, anything concerning this stuff. But maybe just kind of see some footages of him at home, being a dad. Kind of, again, we look at Jordan as kind of this mythical, godlike fucking superhero, to kind of see the human element of Jordan, like him being a dad, him being around his wife, just seeing that aspect of it, I thought would have been pretty interesting. So, to answer your question, Shell, I mean, yeah, I would have liked to seen his wife probably get interviewed, his ex-wife. I mean, she didn't have to be in every episode, but just like a couple minutes, just her thoughts on.
We get like a cameo appearance from his sons and his daughter, like, if you blink, you miss that they were in the doc.
And they were talking about Utah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it was just like, and I would always like to hear his sons, like, how did he, like, we hear about how Jordan always tried to, like, do right by his dad, like, them trying basketball and, like, obviously not being like their father. Like, I want to see how they were affected by it. Like, was he the reason they go into basketball, or did they have the love for the game? Or did he beat it out of them? Like I don't know. I'm just trying to, I wanted to get more of like, okay, we see the man on the court, but what's the man off the court? Because even though the documentary dealt with a lot of like off the court, quote unquote, situations, it was still dealing with like professional basketball. What is it like when he takes that home? Did he break down in front of his wife when his dad?
Well, see, that's the point, Nick, and that's where I started earlier when we started this conversation. Again, Jordan never, and like I said, I'm speaking from somebody who watched him his whole career. He never gave us this kind of access.
Right.
Never. Like, you weren't, like, we just didn't know. And he wasn't going to let you get that close to him so you could know. So I'm not surprised that his kids, was on screen for, 3 seconds talking about the Utah Jazz. I'm not surprised by that at all. I'm not surprised that his ex-wife nor his current wife were interviewed. This was, like to your point, Nick, this was strictly about basketball and everything about basketball. Even the death of his father, it was correlated into him playing basketball.
Right.
So Jordan, even as open as he appears on this documentary, he's still a very private person.
Right.
And it's certain things that he's not going to let you in on. And he just not, I mean, like I said, they filmed this documentary in a house or in a couple of houses, and none of them were his.
Right.
These weren't even his houses. So it was just, that's just who he is. I mean, he's going to, this was his, and to my knowledge, Michael Jordan has never written an autobiography. This is sort of his autobiography, if you will.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's finally in his words, and we were privileged to get what we got.
Exactly.
We didn't
very much. Yeah.
We definitely didn't get it all, but once again, I wouldn't expect it all from him. We got more. That's why this documentary was so important and so anticipated. That's why they pushed it way out to June, and everybody was like, "Yeah, so early." It was announced so early because finally unlimited access to the man, the myth, the legend. You know what I'm saying? So it was important that we got that. I saw his daughter speaking about their mom and saying like she lived through it, so she don't need to be, she's fine with not being on the stuff. She didn't need to be and all that. She didn't want to. So
you got 100 million reasons not to do it.
Right. Yeah. So I don't even know if they asked her to do it or not, but
probably.
They didn't ask her. They didn't ask her. Come on, man.
I get why he didn't involve his family. I'm not surprised. I'm just saying.
You know what, man?
I would have liked.
To be honest, I've seen a lot from Juanita Jordan. I may have seen Juanita Jordan talk or heard her talk twice in all the years that I remember.
I don't even know what she sounds like. I don't even know what she sounds like. I don't know her voice. Like, I don't even know
once.
Yeah.
You won't.
You said this. You heard Maggie Simpson talk more than her.
I mean, so I'm not surprised she didn't. And to be honest, we had gotten through the first 8 episodes, so I didn't even expect to see his kids on there.
I didn't either.
And so I was pleasantly surprised to see his kids on there. But I mean, given the fact that that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me too about episodes 9 and 10 was knowing that it had not been totally completed. I was wondering, I was like, okay, I hope it doesn't feel like they're rushing this at the end. Yeah. And, I thought they did a good job, man. I thought they did a really good job. But no, man, honestly, man, I can't think of anything that they didn't. Well, you know what? Let me ask y'all this, because I don't remember, and maybe I have to go back and I got all the episodes. I'll go back and look. Did they ever talk about Rodman's suspension when he kicked that cameraman?
No, they didn't.
Not really. Not really.
No, they showed it, but they didn't talk about it.
Okay, yeah, because that came during the 72 and 10 season.
Yeah.
And, it was even more pressure on Jordan because now Jordan's like, well, shit, how are we going to do this? How are we going to chase this record when Dennis is gone? Dennis was suspended for 10 games.
Right.
So I couldn't remember if they talked about it or not, but I mean, there's so many things going on, and I know it's only been so much you can squeeze in.
They talked about it on the Rodman documentary, and it makes sense. That was his story, so they saved that for that. So I don't think they really needed to rehash that part. I mean, I get it.
I do like the fact that we got a chance to get beyond the colored hair and the weirdo-ness of Rodman and just understand what kind of player he was. I mean, he was a beast. And, you could say what you want. And I think, there were, like Shelton said earlier, there was some concerns for the Bulls when Rodman got there. But, they knew if he showed up, he was going to play. Now, whatever he did after the game, they didn't really care. But
he clocked in, he clocked out.
Exactly, he clocked in, he clocked out.
Absolutely.
And but I thought that was very, very good. And getting the background on guys like Steve Kerr, I thought those pieces were really even Phil Jackson for that matter too. Yeah, I thought they did a really good job of explaining and seeing how all of those things tied. And I found it interesting. And like I said, just a little small thing that I caught that Jordan never discussed his father with, what happened with Steve Kerr's father.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, given the fact that both of their fathers were murdered.
Yeah. I would, to answer my own question too, I'm going to tell y'all is I forgot to say, I wanted to see Craig Hodges on there. And the only reason, y'all know I was Craig Hodges. I just wanted his take on everything and how it correlates today. Yeah, this was more like a Jordan thing, but Craig was there too. You know what I'm saying? And he was pushed out. Not only was he pushed out, he's pushed out of the leagues. So I really would like to have heard a little bit.
You can't go to the White House with a dashiki on.
Yeah. Right. So
thanks.
I would have liked to have heard a little bit of that.
Yeah, Craig Hodges is a good one. That's a good one. What about you? What about you, Shelton? What about anything that you wanted to be discussed? I know you mentioned Craig Hodges, but anything else? Anything in particular that you feel they left out that they should have covered? What was anything that you kind of disappointed about?
No, I think they pretty much did everything in this particular documentary that I would have wanted. I said on DES that I want to get more into that Dream Team, even though they did do a special on the Dream Team. I would love to just watch that whole practice live.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
That's what they need to air. That's what they need to air.
Man, just the practice. Just the practice. Bro, that was some true ball playing. And you talk about trash talking.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Another one was when the Space Jam games. When he was shooting Space Jam, and how he brought all those. Reggie Miller was like,
know about that. We didn't know about that, Nick.
We never heard that before.
We never knew about that. We never knew who showed up for that. So that was like something that we learned during the documentary.
Right.
That's great. You're right.
I thought they did a pretty good job of trying to explain the whole Isaiah Jordan thing. I was really surprised that kind of social media took off with it the way that it did. But I think the thing that came away that I took from all of that is that Jordan is a proud guy. Isaiah's a proud guy. You know, Isaiah's from Chicago. Jordan played in Chicago. And I think the whole walking off the court issue, I think the thing was that Jordan, at the very least, wanted to be acknowledged. He didn't need Isaiah to dap him up and say, hey, we're going to eat lunch tomorrow, that type of stuff. But he wanted to be acknowledged, and he felt like Isaiah and the Pistons stole that moment for him.
Don't y'all feel like those dudes need to sit down on the table and just talk?
I would love, man, that's what I was about to say.
I just love that. Like, I would just love them to see that.
I don't think they. But I never thought that they were that. I think they always had a mutual respect for each other's game, and I think that's where it ended.
Yeah,
I think it was just there.
It's competitiveness. The fight, like I said, watching this documentary, if nothing else, you saw that man had fire in his eyes in certain parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I wish it was like that now, man.
Yeah, you don't have players like that.
Shelton, his eyes was yellow. He always got fired.
It was. Hey, that's why the eyes was that yellow. I saw.
But you're right, man. It's not like that anymore, and it's. I mean, like, you know, I mean, you said you would like to see Jordan and Magic. I mean, Jordan and Isaiah sit down. Hell, we just saw Magic and Isaiah sit down. They were friends.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they had beef. Well, I don't want to say beef, but they fell out of their friendship. And I think, you know, they had a falling out. So it was interesting, man. And I just hope going forward, I know that there probably will be other documentaries. I think the NBA did a great thing in one, having the Bulls allow them to get this kind of because you don't get this kind of access to teams. You know what I'm saying? Right. First and foremost. And would I love to see a documentary on the Kobe Shaq Lakers or the LeBron's Cavs or LeBron's Heat or, you know,
oh my goodness,
Warrior? I would love to see all of that, but I don't know that we're necessarily going to have the footage. And then also, we live in an era where everything's kind of present. So how much of that can we watch and be like, oh man, I've seen all of that. I know all of that.
Yeah, it won't be till a decade plus after, especially like with the LeBron and Warriors stuff. Like, yeah, that won't be till later on. But yeah, no, I'm not mentioning it like I want them to make amends or anything. No, I would just love to just see those two in a room together interact. Like, I just think that'd be must see TV.
Yeah,
no question.
I got one more part of the doc that they didn't explain well. I think that's the only gripe I got was Jordan's diet. Because how the hell you smoke cigars every day and then you drop 60 on those damn stuff? Like, he had a bottle of Henny and a cigar at even at practice.
That's just God given, man. That's just God.
Yeah. They said Jordan was when they said he was a freak of nature, he was a freak of nature. I mean, like, even the part where they talk about the dream team, and he said, I played 36 holes a day. I'm like, who plays 36 holes of golf and then go plays a basketball? That's
and these were the days before conditioning is, you know, it's not like it's like how it is now with conditioning and, you know, muscle milk and, you know, diet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like that's 1992. Like
that's impressive, but y'all do know Bubba Chuck would eat 20 tacos before every game, right?
Yeah. I mean, tacos is one thing.
That's impressive. Yeah.
But I feel like that's more like they just said that, like, he probably ate 20 tacos one time. Like, Jordan smoked cigars every day. Shelton. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Cigars
but you know
on game day. And he lift weights game day. That's crazy. I mean, like, I can't imagine lifting weights and then going to play basketball.
Yeah, that's crazy. But they used to smoke
your legs got to be
time though. Back in the day. cigarettes and liquor at halftime.
Yeah, man.
So that was
It's just how athletes were built back then, man.
Yeah,
It's different now. It's just, and plus what we know so much about the human body now compared to even just 1992 is just different. You know, what we know about, back then, people, smoking was still something that was just like, okay. Like, you can smoke on cigarettes. Exactly. Right. So just look at how much the world has changed, even from just like, just 20-something, 25 years from now. Like, just look at how much the world has changed. So yeah, it's you pick up a good point though. It's like, that's just God given, man. That's just God given talent. Yeah. Like, that's just God just gave you this thing.
Right.
Go with it. You know what I mean? Like, that's all that was, man. I was going to ask before Nick chimed in, does Scotty's reputation ever recover from this doc? Because I think he took the biggest L out of all these guys.
The funny thing is,
you know what it is, man. I think if you like Scotty, you'll always like Scotty. Right. If you don't like Scotty, Scotty's one of those people where you either like him or you don't. There's really you never think about it. Anytime you mention Scottie Pippen, you never hear anybody be like, I'm okay on Scotty. No, they either love Scottie Pippen or they hate him. There's no in between. I'm
neutral on Scotty. Like I'm very.
You're one of the few, Nick.
I thought this. Well, my thing was, I thought this documentary was going to make me fall in love with Scotty.
Right.
and it kind of just, it did a little bit of both. It made me love him and hate him. Like the first time, like seeing him without Jordan, how he led that team, I was like, oh, I fuck with this. And then how it ended, I was like, well, I don't fuck with that as much as I used to. And then it's just like, and then like him signing a 7-year, $500,000 contract. Like, it's just like it was just like, all right, bro, you wasn't even good on the back end. Like, you're not even getting compensated. So to me, it was just like he solidified himself as probably the greatest number 2 to a number 1 of all time. Yeah. Like, that's all he really did. Like, you're not gonna fall in love with him. Like, this Jordan doc made me fall in love with Michael Jordan on and off the court. Like, with Scotty, it's just like, if it ain't on the court, then I don't really care about it.
Right. Scotty's going to get his flowers when he's gone, unfortunately. I think that's the time when he's going to be celebrated more than any other time. Once again, all this did was cast a bigger shadow over him and his accomplishments by just putting out this documentary, because it was more about Michael than anybody else, and it just made Scotty more Tito than anybody than Jermaine. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's really all it did, man. Is put more shadow on him. And to your point too, Nick, I think Scotty had an off-season job, man. Because that contract didn't cut.
Well, I mean, 2.5. Well, listen, he was making $2.5 million, so $2.5 million in 1992 is like what? Like shit.
Well, you know what?
Factor in inflation, like $20 million now.
But you want the Chicago Bulls.
You got to keep it in context, though, Nick. Scotty was making 2.5. Michael was making $4 million. Michael was making $30 million off the court. So there's a difference. Michael wasn't making that much more than Scotty. And this was a time where in the NBA we didn't have the contracts that we had. You could actually sign a 10-year deal. That's why we had those dynasties the way that we did, because you could have a Laker dynasty because pretty much you bring it back the same team every year.
And the one thing I learned that today, because Sam Smith was in an interview on Mad Dog Radio on Sirius, and I listened to it and I learned this, that per the CBA, you weren't allowed to renegotiate your contract back in the day. Like because I know a lot of people say like, oh, why didn't they just renegotiate or plan an extension? You weren't allowed to do that per the CBA.
You signed it. You did. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. But that's what my thing was, just like, I know he's not making money off the court. Usually, like, certain athletes would be like, all right, I ain't making no bread off the court for me to take a pay cut or anything. So I need to get as much as I can from the game, because that's all I really got. But that's why it shocked me, because like you don't hear about no shoe out there. I mean, there may be a shoe called the Pippins, but it ain't. I know it ain't selling. It ain't selling for shit. So I know you gotta be like, bro, this is my bread and butter. Let me make sure my business is And I would think, the
Pippins was nice. He sold some shoes now. He wasn't Jordan, of course, but he had
but that's what I'm saying. Like, I would think that you being next to Jordan would mean that you were you're getting some business tips, especially like how
he did. He did. I think the whole Scottie Pippen contract thing was a little overblown. First of all, you got to factor in inflation. $2.5 million in 1992 is not $2.5 million now. $2.5 million in 1992 was
a lot of money.
I think it's a lot of money back then, right? And also, yeah, you got to think about all the local endorsements he got. You know, come down to Chevrolet, Nissan, and Rockwood, and you know, all the local stuff he probably felt. I mean, so yeah, let's just put it this way: Scottie Pippen was not starving.
Here's the thing.
I know he ain't starving, but he ain't do all that to drive a RAV4. That's all I'm trying to say.
I talked to a dude that played with the Packers, and he was saying he played back in the day when Brett Favre was there, and he was saying, man, everybody see you as an athlete and think you just got all this money. He said, but it's what messes you up is, and Kevin Hart said the same thing too. You know, you hanging with people with more money than you, and you do what they do, it'll mess you up. And that's kind of probably the position Scottie was in. Yeah, Scottie made, you know, less than Michael. Michael probably made $30 million more outside, but Scottie's hanging with Michael every day. So when Michael's spending, Scottie's spending. And before you just think that 2.5 is like gone.
Just think about this. Bismack Biyombo got $60 million.
I hate this
from I forgot who. Charlotte, right? He got $60 million from Charlotte. Timothy Mozgov got $62 million from the Lakers. Like just put that in perspective when you think about Scottie Pippen and his contract. Like, it's just a different world, man. It's just a different world, man.
Totally different world.
Now it's going the other way, where you got guys like Tobias. Like Tobias Harris makes $180 million. Like Tobias Harris.
And people came through at the wrong time. Scottie won at the wrong time.
People justify that Tobias Harris contract by saying, "Oh, they had to give somebody something. Like they had to give money to somebody since Jimmy left." I'm like, nigga, give me $180 million. I'll throw some shots too. I'll miss some shots when y'all looking for a clutch basket. I can do that.
Yeah,
he don't even have a shoe.
Yeah. No, I feel y'all on that, man.
But I came away from it. I came away from it not hating Scottie. I love Scottie, man. I think it's, you know, he will go down as, like you said, one of the best, probably the best number two. And he's not Jordan. And even and they touched on it, even in the 94, 95 season, you know, the Bulls were one bad call. Even at that series where he sat out that, you know, final 1.8 seconds, the Bulls were a bad call away from making it to the finals. So, you know, and Scottie was in MVP conversation. He won the All-Star Game MVP. You know, he had one of his best years, and the Bulls played better as a team because, you know, Jordan wasn't there. But I love Scottie, man. But like you said, it's
that asking out of that game is going to be a black eye forever.
Oh yeah. I mean, because like they said, you quit. Let's just call it what it is.
You know what got me though? It's like 20 something years later that if I had to look back on it, I don't think I would change any of it. What? Like, you know what? Like, did you even learn anything from that?
Mm-hmm. That's that. Now, when you say where Pippen looked bad, I think that's where he really looked bad because he had a chance to square everything up and be like, you know what? If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have done it.
Well, he's saying that with 20/20 hindsight because they won 6 rings regardless. So it's easy to be like, you know what? It didn't really matter. Like I'll do it again. It ain't changed shit. Like, I still won 6 rings.
It didn't, but in the public opinion on Scottie Pippen,
he looked horrible. Yes, he looked horrible.
To Manny's point, people will still say that. The day that he retired from the NBA, that came up. I mean, it is what it is.
But even the injury to start the 97-98 season, basically saying I'm not gonna fuck up my summer. Like, just imagine if a motherfucker said that now. Like, just imagine, like Scottie basically was like, "Oh, fuck y'all niggas, I'm a chill all summer."
Imagine him sitting out. Imagine him sitting out that last 1.8 seconds, and then Kukoc hitting the game-winning shot today.
Man. I don't think Scottie survives that in today's basketball. I don't think the way social media is now.
They would have traded him.
Yeah, they would have had to trade him. I don't think he survives that. You know, I don't care what Michael would have said or done. You know, to save him. Like, I just don't think he survives.
Michael wasn't there, so it's like Michael was playing baseball, and that's one thing that the documentary kind of reminded me that I totally forgotten. if there is no baseball strike, maybe Jordan never comes back. I never really thought about it until they said it. I was like, damn, because
that's a very good point.
Baseball goes on strike, and I, honestly, I saw Jordan play baseball. I think he was just, I mean, like, he did well for the time that he was there, but I don't think he would have ever made the major leagues. But
no,
Major League Baseball teams would have strung him along because he was box office for them. So yeah, you could sell out those little Birmingham, and you know, even if you put him in AAA, he would have sold out everything, and people would have come to see him. But I don't think he would have ever made a major league team.
I think eventually he would have came back, but I don't think he would have came back as soon as he did.
You know what, Manny? I don't think he would have come back. I really don't. I think he would have continued to play, particularly if he thought that he could make it to the majors. I think he would have continued to play, and I don't think he would have ever seen basketball again. So, you know, we might have the Major League Baseball to thank for, you know, those other three rings.
Yeah, that's true. That is a very good point, though. That's a very good point. And finally, what did this documentary accomplish? Like, did it for the folks that, do you guys think it accomplished anything for the folks that think LeBron's the GOAT or don't think Jordan is the GOAT? Like, what ultimately did this documentary accomplish? Like, I guess what was the purpose of it?
I mean, if you look at the ESPN polls, they saying that Jordan is now officially the GOAT, whether you from like people who are 35 years and under and 35 and up, it's like skewing towards Jordan. Now, obviously that may be because of recency bias, but I think that this documentary makes you realize, it makes you compare like we always do even more. Because now you look at all the people that Jordan shut out. Like, that goes back to my previous point that I made earlier. Like, everybody is eating in LeBron's era. There's a lot of niggas that did not eat in Jordan's era, and they still hot about that. Charles Barkley, you know what I'm saying? Karl Malone,
Reggie,
Gary, you know, Gary Payton. Even though Gary got his ring later, he didn't get
Patrick Ewing.
Reggie Miller.
Like, there is a lot of niggas that was like, bro, he stopped me from doing reaching my highest potential, and I was one of them. Nick, like, everybody who was talking shit about him or like congratulating him, whatever, these are Hall of Famers. These are legends in their own right. These are players that are gonna get their own documentary one day. Like, and he stopped them. Like, when we see LeBron's like documentary, there's gonna be a lot of happy faces from his rivals. Like, we knocked his ass out, boy. We was lit that night. Like, Steph Curry gonna say like, yeah, we was smelling champagne like till this day.
You wrong for that, man. You wrong for that.
I'm just saying,
nigga, damn fool.
And and you know what's crazy? Those names you mentioned and the difference in players now and back then. Back then, it was about winning. You wanted to win. It wasn't about the money was important, but not nowhere near to the level it is now. Now it is more balanced as far as your outside interest in your finances and your portfolio in sports. Back then, it was like win or go home. That's it. And that was the biggest difference.
You know what it is back then? My bad, man. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was it.
No, I was just going to say, you know what it was? Back then, they were basketball players first. Now they're businessmen playing basketball.
Yes.
And that's the biggest difference now. And it just, and I talked about it on one of the earlier episodes. I just feel like now, back then basketball was the number one priority in the NBA. And you did have some soap opera elements, obviously. But now I feel like so much of the NBA has become soap opera. Like, it feels like even the regular season don't really matter. It's just who's going to play where, what team's going to trade this guy, who's going to sign where. And like, I just feel like that's what's kind of taking me a little bit out of basketball now, because it's just like it's too much of soap opera now. Well, back then it just felt like what the Lakers was going to do, what the Bulls were going to do, it was about what was on the court, not, is Clyde Drexler going to team up with Charles Barkley in Phoenix? Like, what? No, like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Only because I'm thinking about like LeBron and with Delonte West and how they was talking about like him smashing his moms, and that's what messed him up. Like, it's like, hold on, bro, we really talking about this affecting this series right now? Like, you're right about that.
Yeah, man, yeah. So
I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question. I think it's you have to again go. And I hate keep using the same word. It's context. There's a generation of people who, all they knew was Jordan from his sneakers and a meme. That's all they knew.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, for them, this was eye-opening, I think. Now, again, it goes back to context. Sports fans like who they like. I'm not here to convince somebody if they say, okay, well, LeBron's the best. LeBron's the GOAT. LeBron, I think, is going to go down with a 3-6 finals record. And, he may have all of these statistical categories when it's all said and done. Now, whether or not you want to name him the greatest of all time, that's up to you. I'm not.
It's all subjective. It's all subjective, man. There's no right or wrong answer. If somebody wanted to sit here and say Kareem is the GOAT because of what he did in high school, what he did in college, and obviously what he did in the NBA, we could have a conversation. Bill Russell, we could have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Larry Bird and Magic, we could have a conversation. Kobe, we could have a conversation. LeBron, we could have a conversation. Like, honestly, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, obviously, if you start naming somebody like, I think Chris Paul's the greatest of all time. Of course, yeah. Like, what? No. But like anybody in that top 10, top 15, I mean, you could honestly make an argument for. You can make an argument for Jerry West. You can make an argument for Oscar Robertson. Like, if you were OG, you were old head, and all you saw was Jerry West, like you can't tell that OG that Jerry West wasn't that dude, and he could probably sell you on like why Jerry West was the guy, and then you'd factor in everything that he did as a GM and as an executive. Like, I mean, the point is that it's all subjective, and at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer. Of course, most people will say Jordan because of all the things that he accomplished and how he changed the game. But this isn't science, man. There's no scientific fact that proves that Jordan is better than anybody else. It just is what it is.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it's people like who they like. I remember having a discussion maybe about a month or so ago, and a guy was talking about LeBron, and I said, well, can you tell me when LeBron passed Kobe in your opinion? Oh, well, LeBron was better than Kobe. I was like, well, tell me when he passed him. I was like, because you guys and the media and ESPN has always said, well, LeBron is this. And LeBron, and I'm not taking anything away. I love LeBron. I love watching him play. I was like, but please tell me when he passed Kobe. Tell me when he passed Magic.
And the point about LeBron is still currently going. He's still in his era. So it's hard to really grade it.
To be honest, it's really not fair to LeBron. It's not fair to Kobe for them to be compared to this guy and Michael Jordan because of the era and what he had to do and how he went about it.
Right.
It's different. I mean, like, you're better off comparing them to their, adversaries and people that they competed against as opposed to someone who now if you tell me LeBron is the best player that I've ever seen live, I can't argue with that because you may not have been around to see Jordan.
Correct.
But I mean, like, that's why I could never say like Jordan was better than Wilt. I didn't see Wilt. My dad did. Now, when I asked my dad, I'm like, well, Dad, who do you think is better, Wilt or Jordan? And he might go on for Wilt for 20 minutes, and then I'll go on about Jordan. So, I mean, it's like you said, man, it's subjective. I think this documentary did a great job of exposing what Jordan really was. But ultimately, and Shelton can attest to it, if you were there, this documentary makes it that much more special.
Yes, yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was, like I said, it was just a great thing to behold. It came at the perfect time. We're all stuck in the house with this pandemic. That I was looking forward to every Sunday.
It was needed. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
very much absolutely. So. Yeah. Well, all right, fellas. I don't know what's, I mean, y'all gonna watch the Lance doc?
No.
I may check it out.
Yeah.
I may check it out.
I mean, I'll check it out. There's nothing else to watch. Yeah. I'll be watching.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Nah, it's going to be interesting. That Lance documentary is going to be interesting. I hope it's accurate. Like, I hope it's real.
I never got into Lance. I So I
got into the cancer, surviving, and live strong stuff, and I think it's going to be interesting to see like that part of it, and like basically how he shammed the whole generation of people. Basically, essentially, he was this like historical figure, and he was a cheater. So yeah,
I'm conflicted I'm conflicted on that though, because he brought a lot of awareness and attention, a lot of money. Well, at least I hope he did to the cancer research and all that. And so, and we throw that all away because he did some steroids. Like, bro, we saw steroids did a lot for baseball, so we know what steroids can do for our industry. So that's why I was like, you know what? if he wanna be the one that falls on that, then that's cool. But I like that he stood for something, at least something positive. And what he did, I don't think was that heinous to erase all that.
Well, it was, Nick, in the sense that he cheated the sport. I mean, this dude was so dominant that if it was closer, or if he only won a couple races, then it wouldn't be so bad. But the fact that he was so dominant in his time and he cost so much, it's just like
But he had cancer too, right? So it's like, damn. Like,
yeah, he survived cancer. He came back from cancer.
Out of everybody who taking steroids, I'm like, all right, bro, this nigga just survived it. He just fought for his life. Like
I get it, but still, the rules are the rules, man. I mean, like I said, you took food out of somebody's mouth that way, and you cheated somebody out of their championship, but it's just not right. I mean,
see, that's what makes this. That's what's going to make this Lance documentary interesting.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be, because it's. I mean, you guys are not both of y'all are not wrong. Like I think it's an interesting parallel. Like it's an interesting discussion. So I'm actually interested in the next couple docuseries they got. They got the Bruce Lee one coming out. That's going to be dope.
Yeah.
The home run chase in '98, I think that's gonna be really good. Interesting.
Well, they got Sammy Sosa looking like Casper on that one, boy.
Man, that was a red bone, man. We've already talked about another guy that's taking L's on the show. We're not even gonna talk about Sammy, man.
You said he looked like a red bone.
Yeah, he a red bone.
They gotta look like Krusty the Clown on there. I'm like, God damn, he pale as hell.
Have you guys seen the trailer? And I know it's out now. Have you seen the trailer for or seen the actual documentary? Or it's called Blackballed, on the Donald Sterling, him losing the team and what the Clippers went through?
Nah.
It just came out Monday, but it's on an app called. Hang on a second, I can tell you what it is. It's on an app called Quibi, Quibi.
Yeah, I know what that is. I've heard of that.
Yeah. So I haven't seen it yet, but I plan to check it out. But it's supposed to be like 5 or 6 episodes or whatever like that, detailing the Donald Sterling, and they talk to Chris Paul and Matt Barnes, all these guys that were with the Clippers. And I think that's very interesting because that Clipper team was the team that got beat by the Warriors. And the Warriors go one way and the Clippers go another way. And, the rest is history. So
yeah, good looks on that. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. There's another documentary to check out, Stephon Marbury's documentary about his life and his stuff. It's on Amazon Prime and all that. Like, if you got Prime. I think it's everywhere. It's on YouTube, too. It's like one of those documentaries. I think it's like $3. You pay for it. You download it. It's on video on demand. But that's a good documentary, too. I started part of it. I haven't finished it. But that's a good one, too, if y'all looking for something to watch. But,
okay.
Yeah. I'm kind of sad, man. We ain't got the Last Dance Sundays no more, man. But
yeah, I am too. So we'll go.
But hopefully Lance and Bruce Lee and all that keep us interested for the next few weeks. But fellas, I think we got through it. I think we covered everything. That's it. Yeah, let's get up out of here, man. Before we go, each of you, please plug your podcast, what you guys got coming up. Sell yourselves.
I can go first. You could catch me on Frames Per Second podcast, pretty much all over the Dead End Network. Frames Per Second. We like Kyle mentioned, we also are watching Insecure. We're doing weekly recaps. So yeah, you can follow us on IG and Twitter.
I need to get on the Insecure recaps, man.
Yeah, you slipping. It's some great content. So follow us on IG, Twitter, FPS Podcast. We also have a Reddit thread, FPS Podcast, where we talk about everything, movie recommendations and all that. Obviously, I'm on Dead End Sports. Make sure you check us out. We're back on schedule starting next week, recording at 9:00, YouTube Live, and then the podcast comes that following Thursday. And then you can also follow my podcast, No Disrespect, at NDR513 on IG and Twitter.
Cool, man. Hey, I'll go next. This is me, Shelton J, man. I'm on the Black Korea podcast. I think we're back airing, I think ours comes out on Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and check and see what day it comes on. But anyway, the Black Korea podcast, I do Dead End Sports as well. And wherever, all over the Dead End Network, if possible, wherever they let me come on, and that's where I try to be. So, yeah.
Where can they follow you on Twitter, too? Follow on the social.
Shelton Jones 33. On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything.
33 because you're a Kareem fan?
No, 33 was actually that was my brother's number.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I got that from.
That's what's up.
I thought I was gonna say he a Pat Ewing fan. He gotta be.
and my son took the my son took the number 2, so that's where it came from. Lonzo at Charlotte.
All right, old man, your turn.
Oh yeah, for sure. Of course, this is 12 Kyle. You can catch the 12 Kyle podcast. A new podcast episode drops every Thursday. You can find me on Twitter at 12 Kyle. The podcast can be found anywhere where podcasts are free: Spotify, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, you name it. ChristianMingle.com, Black Planet. Wherever you can find free podcasts, that's where I'm at. You can follow me on Twitter and IG at the number 12KYLE.
Christian's Mingle, man. I didn't expect to hit that one on the show. Yeah, you go say MySpace.
Oh yeah, I forgot about MySpace. I never got into MySpace.
Oh man. As always, man, you guys know where to find us on Twitter at AGS Pod, Instagram AGS Podcast, Facebook Any Given Sunday. Make sure you become a member of AGS Nation. Follow me on Twitter at DManuel Brown, Instagram DManuel Brown, Facebook Manuel Brown, Snapchat MannyBro15. I'm everywhere, man. As always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you to my guests, fellas. I appreciate y'all so much for joining me. It was a blast. I had so much fun chopping it up with y'all, man. Thank you as always for being my guest. Thank you for being a part of the Dead End family. Appreciate y'all. I respect y'all. I love y'all. I love what y'all do. So keep it up. Keep the good work out there going, and appreciate y'all joining the show. And for you guys, the listeners, man, I appreciate y'all for listening and supporting the podcast. As these guys can attest, without the listeners, without the fans, without the audience, there is no podcast. So appreciate y'all each and every week for listening, supporting, subscribing. Make sure you guys support all of the Dead End Network podcasts: Black Korea, Frames Per Second, Dead End Sports, Dead End Hip Hop, is the Mike Stallone, everything. Go check it out. Go check out our website. It's dope, man. Brand is really brolic, so check it out. But yeah, man, I'm gonna stop blabbing. I'm gonna get up out of here. Make sure you catch us next week on another episode of the podcast. I think we're going to be back on schedule next week as far as recording on Sundays, but we'll see. I'll see how I feel like. But if anything, I'll let y'all know on Twitter and whatnot with the next episode coming up. But for my guest, Shelton J, Nick, 12 Kyle, I'm Manny Brown. We are out of here. Peace, everybody.